Hearing is called to order. This is on the agenda today is the proposed budget under the fiscal year 2023 NEP for the Development Academy of the Philippines, Commission on Higher Education, state universities and colleges, including the University of the Philippines. Before I proceed, let me acknowledge the presence of my colleague, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, the chairman of the Committee on Higher Education, Basic Education. Before I give my colleague the floor, let me just go through some of the things I need to put on record. None of this naman is required, right? Oh, okay. Because in the interest of time, I'd like to spread some things on the record, but I don't mind doing it later on because we had to move this hearing from yesterday because of carding. And we may have 2 hours or we may have maybe 2.5, depending on what time session starts. So I'll do away with the opening statements about the importance of education. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. Of course, this is online and live. So we need to ensure that the Filipino people know that we are prioritizing education as required by the Constitution, to be clear about that. Senator Angara, our chairman of the Committee on Finance, is online. Sir, would you like to say something before I ask Senator Gatchalian if he'd like to say a few words? Chairman Sunny Angara? Oops, nawala. Tayong nawala or silang nawala? Okay. Maybe Senator Gatchalian would like to say a few words, no? No need? Okay. Let's proceed, no? We want to be able to get in as much information as possible. Upon request, President Tirso Ronquillo, PASUC President, will take the floor first. After that, DAP. After that, UP, and then CHED. The reason why we put CHED in the end is because most of the questions are for CHED para tuloy-tuloy na. For the staff of my colleagues who are listening, please tell your principal that we have started. I know this is last minute. We had to adjust the schedule, but they can come in anytime, online or in person. I just request that we allow the presentations to finish first because pag nauna yung questions, hindi na natatapos yung presentations. So on that note, let's proceed. President Ronquillo of PASUC, you have the floor. I believe you were given the time, the amount of time you have to deliver your presentation. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, sir. Hello, Chairman. Hi, President Ronquillo, are you there? So we can start. If not, I'll give the floor to DAP. Attorney Caronan, are you available sa DAP? I don't want to waste time.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Mauna na
We are
kayo.
listening.
Sige, mauna na kayo.
Good afternoon. I'm Attorney Caronan, the President of Development Academy of the Philippines. Thank you for the opportunity to present our proposed budget and also what was approved under our National Expenditure Plan and our request for reconsideration on those items that were not included in the NEP. Next slide, please. The outline of my presentation is as follows. A brief overview of the DAP, the government-mandated programs for DAP, the 2023 proposed budget, and the items we request for reconsideration. And if there is still time, a brief description of those items for reconsideration. And finally, a brief survey of the 2021-2022 accomplishments of DAP. Next slide, please. In a nutshell, the Development Academy of the Philippines, or DAP, is a government-owned and controlled corporation established in 1973 with an original charter under PD 205 that is mandated primarily to conduct education, training, consultancy, and research to both government entities and the private sector. As an institution with corporate powers, the DAP sustains itself by raising revenues through projects and programs that enable it to pay around 600 employees, In other words, the salaries of its employees are not included in the NEP and the General Appropriations Act. The corporate and government mandated program of DAP that was approved for fiscal year 2023 are classified into two major and final outputs as summarized in the table being presented. These include, number one, education and training programs, and two, research and technical assistance on public sector productivity program, as shown in the first and the second column of this slide. The third column on education and training programs, locally funded projects, are the physical and structural support components of the first column. Next slide, please. Shown is the DAP budget comparison for the fiscal years 2022 and 2023, including our proposed budget, the approved national expenditure plan, our request for reconsideration, and the total budget if both NEP and our request for reconsideration are granted. The first column shows that the approved budget of DAP in fiscal year 2022 in the amount of 614,417,000 pesos. The second column shows that for 2023, we originally proposed a total budget of 973,283,000 pesos. However, we were only approved 577,027,000 pesos for our National Expenditure Program or NEP, as shown in the third column. This is actually 6% lower than the GAA last year. In this regard, as shown in the fifth column, we humbly appeal for a reconsideration in our budget amounting to 123,559,000 pesos, which is an additional 21% to our approved NEP for the fiscal year 2023 and an increase of 14% relative to our GAA from 2022. Should this amount be reconsidered, we will receive at most a total amount of 700,586,000 pesos for our fiscal year 2023 MOE. As mentioned earlier, the items that were approved in our NEP and the items that we are requesting reconsideration for have two major and final outputs, namely education and training program and research and technical assistance program. Next slide, please. Specific to the major and final outputs on our education and training program for the fiscal year 2023, we proposed a total allocation, budget allocation of 293,147,550 pesos. However, we were only approved the amount of 241,374,000 pesos for our NEP. These are broken down as follows. 176,054,000 pesos for the Public Management Development Program, 22 million pesos as support to the projects and programs of our Productivity Development Center, and 43,320,000 pesos for the Education, Training, and Capacity Building Seminar. On the other hand, the programs that we are appealing reconsideration for initially totals to 51,773,550 pesos. However, this may be reduced as we shall explain later. This amount is broken down as follows. 16,773,000 pesos and 550 pesos for our Capability Development Program on environmental governance and management for resiliency and future readiness. This is a capability development program on environmental governance that aims to strengthen the adaptive capacity of local communities and increase the resilience of their natural ecosystems by integrating three policies, namely, number one, climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and natural resource conservation in tackling environmental issues to a cluster of similarly situated LGUs. The program aims to develop local climate change action plan and cluster action based on climate vulnerabilities and environmental risk of contiguous local government units. Next item is the 15 million pesos for our massive open online course on data science and analytics, or MOOCs, led by DAP's Sparta project. This project was created to foster the data science and analytics ecosystem of the country through knowledge democratization and activation and engagement, which involves making educational content in data science and analytics widely available to the Filipino people through scholarships and conducting events and R&D respectively. Since 2018 up to date, the Project Sparta has already produced 30 data science and analytics online courses that are based on professional maturity model of the Analytics Association of the Philippines and the competencies identified by the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. Currently, at the third, with respect to item number 3, the DAP management is humbly requesting the reallocation of the 20 million peso budget that was originally proposed by the Graduate School of Public Development Management, or GSPDM, to other priority items for the following reasons. For reasons that we have stated in our letter to your office, ma'am. Next slide, please. Specific to the major and final outputs on our research and technical assistance program for fiscal year 2023, we have proposed a total budget allocation of 285 million and 948,000 pesos. However, we were only approved the amount of 217 million and 663,000 pesos for our NEP. These are broken down as follows. 80.6 million for government quality management program, 34,995,000 pesos for modernizing government regulations program, 42,579,000 pesos for Center for Excellence in Public Sector Productivity, 28,553,000 pesos for harmonization of the national government's performance monitoring and reporting system, 29,120,000 pesos for the research on sustainable development goals and futures thinking, and 3,214,000 for research program of the Graduate School of Public and Development Management. The programs that we are appealing reconsideration for amounts to 68,285,000 pesos, and these are broken down as follows. An additional 26 million pesos for GQMP. It is a program created to help enhance the performance of public sector organizations in delivering quality services through quality management system. With the amount being appealed for next year, we can provide technical assistance to LGUs in establishing QMS, certifiable to ISO 901-2015, using the ISO 18091 series of 2019 guidelines. Number 2, an additional 3,285,000 pesos for the Modernizing Government Regulations Program. This is a program established to examine the existing regulatory environments affecting the country's priority industries and develop proposals that would make those regulations more relevant and coherent. With the amount being appealed, given the tightness of our fiscal resources, we understand that the budget we are requesting the consideration for may not be enough. This is why we have also initiated the ranking of each of the programs being appealed for a consideration by their level of priority. If we may respectfully suggest, the program that we wish to be prioritized are as follows. First is the massive open online courses, or MOOCs. Second is the funding for the Center for Excellence in Data Science and Analytics. Third is the Smart and Creative Communities Program. Fourth is the Foresight and Anticipatory Governance Program. Fifth is the Capability Development Program on Environment Governance. Sixth is the Government Quality Management Program. Seventh is the Modernizing Government Results Program. Eighth is the DAP Idea Generation Hub. That would be all, Madam Senator.
Thank you for that. We will, like I said, no, we will move the questions portion to the end after all the presentations so that we can finish the presentations. Thank you, President Caronan. We'll get back to you later. So let's now, ready na ba si President Tirso?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Oh, sige, you have the floor. Please proceed.
Madam Chair,
Yes. Ay, sorry. Yes. Let me first acknowledge, nagkwentuhan na kami. Nagkwentuhan na kami. So in my mind, I have acknowledged the presence of our majority floor leader, Senator Joel Villanueva. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that we're all dying to hear the presentation of PASOK. I just want to put on record that I am greeting our dear President Tirso Ronquillo a belated happy birthday. Nothing more, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Joel.
Magpapalibre pa sana kami sa kanya kahapon. Kaya lang hindi natuloy yung hearing natin. Di ba? So, pero siguro hindi siya nakalusot. Pwede pa naman talagang belated. Let me greet you na rin, President Ronquillo. Sige, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you po. Thank you po.
Banggitin na birthday nyo para baka dumami ang senador na tumulong sa budget ng mga SUC.
Salamat po kay Carding. Hindi kami nakapunta dyan kahapon. The Honorable Chairperson of the Committee on Finance, Senator Angara, and of course, to our Senate Majority Leader, Senator Joel, our friend, the Honorable Chairperson of Finance Subcommittee D, our ally, Senator Pia Cayetano, honorable members of the Committee on Finance, honorable members of the Senate, honorable chairman, commissioners of the Commission on Higher Education, my colleagues in state universities and colleges and other government agencies, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. On behalf of the 114 SUCs in the country, allow me at the outset to express our sincerest gratitude for this opportunity to present the honorable members of the committee the SUC budget proposal for 2023. Without your active engagement and support, our annual budget exercise cannot succeed. The SUC's budget of 85.9 billion in 2021 and 104 billion for the current year were used and continuously being put to good use as reflected in the individual SUC's accomplishments submitted to regulatory and monitoring government agencies concerned. The next slide. The strength of public higher education in the Philippines lies in the strong 114 SUCs with 485 satellite campuses currently serving 1.8 million students, producing and contributing to the workforce average of 300,000 graduates every year, molded by 70,000 faculty and staff and supported by 50,000 job order workers, individual contract service providers, as well as part-time lecturers. In the next slide, the total SUC's budget per 2023 NEP is 93.325 billion pesos, broken down by expense class. 60.03% or 56.02 billion of the total budget is allotted for personal services. 36.83% or 34.37 billion is for MOOE and only 3.15% or 2.3 billion is for capital outlays. In the next slide, next slide, please. This slide shows the comparison of the NEP and actual projected higher education enrollment for academic year 2022-2023 of 1.85 million distribution per region. In the figure, Region 3 and Calabarzon has the biggest enrollment of 11% share, while NCR, excluding UP, follows. Meanwhile, BARM SUCs registered the lowest enrollment, which accounts to 1% of the total of 1.85 million. In the next slide, it shows the regional distribution of the 2023 budget as reflected in the NAP. Of the total 93.3 billion budget, UP system got the biggest share of 23%, followed by Region 3, consisting of 12 SUCs, and Region 6, consisting of 11 SUCs at 8% of the total budget. And NCR, 7 SUCs excluding UP, is at 7% share, while Region 8 with 10 SUCs and MSU system at 6% share. In the next slide, we have the trend of our budget over the years. The trend in SUC's budget through the years from 2014 to the current year, 2022, has been constantly increasing through the sincere efforts and support of the Senate and Congress by providing additional funding. However, for this coming year, 2023, when compared to GAA, the budget of 93.325 billion represent a huge decrease of 10.852 billion over the SUC's budget for 2022 or 10.42%. Madam Chair, this year, 2022, SUCs were allocated the highest budget, and we hope we got the same allocation or even more allocation in the coming year, 2023. Broken down, there is a slight increase in PS of 1.56 billion or 2.87%, but a decrease in MOOE of 1.73 billion or 4.8% and huge decrease in capital outlay of 10.68 billion or 78.46%. In the next slide, this shows a regional comparison of GAA 2022 versus NEP 2023. Two regions, specifically CAR and BARM, have registered a very minimal increase of 80.75 million, ranging from 0.4% to 10% increase. But all other 15 regions and 2 systems, UP and MSU, have a combined net decrease of 10.93 billion, ranging from 2% to 17%. In the next slide, this table shows a comparison of current year's GAA versus NEP of 2023 in MOOE, which suffered cuts of 4.8% or a total decrease of 1.73 billion. Of the 114 SUCs, only one SUC, PMMA in particular, registered an increase in MOE of a mere 770,000, while the rest of our SUCs registered a net decrease of 1.73 billion in our MOE. In the next slide, when GAA 2022 is compared to NEP 2023 in capital outlay, the table shows a total decrease of 10.68 billion or 78.5%, which cuts across most of the regions. It may be observed that although 34 registered an increase in capital outlay, which ranges from 3% to 2,281%, its net is only 457 million, while 83 registered a huge net decrease of 11.14 billion, which accounts to 5% to 99% decrease. This year's capital outlay is 25 million across the board for all the 117 SUCs, which we all surprise. In the next slide, as shown in this next slide, the NAP amount of 93.3 billion is lower by 113 billion or 54.77% of the proposed budget of 206.3 billion. So in summary, Madam Chair, what we got in the NEP is less than half of what we propose. Of the proposed 99.3 billion budget for capital outlays, only 2.93 billion was considered for funding or a reduction of 97.05% of what we have requested to DBM through our respective Regional Development Council. In the next slide, this shows the budget utilization of the SUCs per region. As per BESF table in 2020 and 2021, the rate of utilization is 91% and 86% respectively. But since there were continuing appropriations, the rates are actually higher. Based on our survey for obligation versus allotment in 2021, it is at least 93%. And as of June of the current year, our utilization is simply almost half, or 50%. We are hopeful that as we near the end of the year, this will be fully utilized. In the next slide, it shows the per capita spending of government for our SUCs. The baseline is personal services and MOOE, which includes the pre-higher education. Fiscal year 2022 and enrollment based on average of 2021-2022 academic year and academic year 2022 and 2023.
Hello,
amounting
sorry,
to
excuse me.
one-
Yung mic nyo, please, please, please. Your mic, Chedro, Freddy, you're not, please turn off your mic, everyone. And for those of you expecting colleagues to join, please tell them that when they log in, usually that's when the unwelcome the sounds come in kasi hindi sila naka-mute when they are waiting entry into the virtual space. Okay, sige. Go ahead, President Ronquillo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As per our calculation, the lowest per capita spending of the government to our students is 18,907 per student per year, and the highest is 368,003 per student per year. Now, on the average, the per capita spending of the government is 51,396 pesos per student per year. It is quite surprising that 74% of our SUCs have their per capita lower than the average, and only 26% of our SUCs have their per capita cost higher than the average. In the next slide is the summary of our status of unreleased appropriations. Per BESF, in the next slide, the SUCs have a total of unreleased appropriations of 6.4 billion for 116 SUCs, ranging from 340,000 to 741 million, and unobligated allotment of 6.8 billion for 114 SUCs, which ranges from 3,000 to 3.7 billion for UP. In the next slide, the next slide shows the report and status of congressional initiatives under MOOE in GAA 2022. The total amount of additional MOOE is 2.14 billion. In the next slide, we have the report also on the status of the congressional initiatives under capital outlay in GAA 2022, and the total amount of the additional capital outlay, 10.77 billion, which we of course thank Congress, the Senate and the House for being able to provide additional funding for our capital outlay for SUCs on top of the NEP that were given to us last year. In the next slide, next slide. In this slide, Madam Chair, I would like to emphasize further on the appropriations of 1.53 billion on infrastructure. Can you go back to the last next previous slide? Previous slide, please. This is on the status of our some of the capital outlays for our SUCs on infrastructure and smart campus development, operationalization of face-to-face classes, and upgrading of procurement of equipment. We have an appropriation of 1.53 billion pesos. 15 SUCs, which add up to 217 million, have received their SAROs already. And on some other items in this table, regarding the allocation for smart campus development and operationalization of face-to-face classes, we have 1.53 billion, as I mentioned. And I'm also happy to report to this honorable committee the support on the establishment to the College of Medicine, construction of the College of Medicine building for 13 SUCs amounting to 1.25 billion. 3 SUCs have received their SARO and other SUCs submitted request to the BM and awaiting the release of the SARO. On the increase in carrying capacity of nursing and allied health programs for 58 SUCs amounting to 641 million. Some SUCs are already undergoing the procurement process, while most of the SUCs have requested DBM and awaiting for the release of SARO. In the next slide, as we can see, we have here would like to express the appreciation that Congress and Senate have stepped in with additional appropriation through the years. It is, we believe, reflective of a transformative and resilient approach of the legislative for higher education. Nevertheless, SUC budget appropriation is mostly for current operating expenditures, PS and MOOE, and less for capital outlay. Further, SUC's budget appropriations per NEP and GAA is always significantly lower than the proposed budget. The total appropriation of SUCs remain below from what was higher education needs to truly cope with the requirements of globally competitive and resilient higher education system. We understand that due to the pandemic, there is very limited fiscal space for fiscal year 2023, while economic recovery and support to other sectors are the priorities of the government, but it is also our humble belief that in the pursuit of delivering quality higher education, equipment provisions and infrastructure development must also be prioritized to better serve our stakeholders. It is critically important in ensuring that SUCs are consistently building our capacities, both human and physical, the demands of the new normal in higher education considering. It is our collective crusade and prayer for continued assistance through this committee's kind additional budget for the priority program of SUCs. On behalf of the 114 SUCs across the country, we earnestly seek the support of this honorable committee through its legislative power to restore, first, the budget proposal for capital outlay amounting to 99.3 billion in the FY 2023 GAA. Second, increase the appropriation, or if I may correct my statement, it's not increase, but to make sufficient the appropriation for pre-higher education. The reflected appropriation in the NEP is only 18.7 billion, but based on our calculation, based on the exact or number of our enrollees, we need 24.5 billion in the fiscal year 2023 GAA. So there is a gap of around 6 billion just to make this pre-higher education sufficient to what our SUC really need based on the actual number of enrollment. In the next slide, sincere efforts of Senate are highly appreciated through the provision of funds for the Smart Campus projects for SUCs. This will assist SUCs in the initial development of smart campuses through investment in ICT infrastructure, acquisition of learning management system, and other appropriate equipment to fully implement flexible learning modalities. It is our fervent prayer for the sustainability and continuity of this project. Another laudable initiative of this honorable body is the passage of Republic Act 11509 or Doktor para sa Bayan Act. Through this law, SUCs offering medicine program will now be able to realize their desire to upgrade their facilities and increase their capacities, and more SUCs will be able to serve the needs of the community by offering the medicine program. We request the additional funding and continued support be extended for these SUCs offering those College of Medicine. While we consider the need for additional capital outlays, we are also deeply concerned with the funding requirements of the NBC 461 or the compensation and position classification plan for our faculty members. Cycle 8 estimated funding requirement is 4.5 billion. Pending the issuance of said NDBM for the revised guidelines and instrument this fiscal year 2022, it is our collective prayer that no retroactive implementation of the revised guidelines and that funding requirement estimated at 4 billion is made available to implement the 9th cycle in 2023. Our prayers for full implementation and adequate funding of estimated at 7 billion of revised organizational staffing standards for SUCs, phase 1 from DBM, and we are hopeful that the next tranche, the second phase, be finalized and implemented before the end of fiscal year 2023. In closing, the 114 SUC's ability to accomplish the identified priorities anchored on their respective vision and mission translate to major final outputs as a measure of performance and align on the key budget priorities of the government depends to a considerable extent on how SUCs are structured, financed, funded, and managed, how well equipped the faculty, management, and staff to meet the changing demands being placed on them, and how realistic the government financial support in its operation, its limitation to alternative funding sources, and the challenge facing them considering. It is with great appreciation and gratitude that Congress, the House, and the Senate constantly takes notice of our common concerns and extends efforts to increase the budget of SUCs. Help us to be active participants in agenda for prosperity, economic transformation towards inclusivity and sustainability through adequate funding support to our SUCs. We pray for the approval of the SUC's budget per NEP in the amount of 93.32 billion and for the additional budget the Senate, Congress, and DBM may provide for the accomplishment of the identified priorities of SUCs, anchored on our vision, mission, and providing accessible and quality higher education. Once again, to the honorable members of our Finance Committee and the entire leadership of the Senate, maraming salamat po sa inyong patuloy na support sa lahat ng aming state, universities, and colleges in the country.
Thank you, President Tirso. We'll proceed to our next speaker. Like I said, no, I have concerns, but I'll wait. I'll follow my own rules and ask them later on my questions. For UP, President Danny Concepcion will deliver. Will make the presentation, and then after that, please be ready, Chairman Popoy de Vera.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. For the UP, we submitted a proposal to DBM in the total amount of 44 billion 149 million pesos. But this proposal was trimmed down by DBM in the NEP for 2023 to 21.53 billion pesos, or a difference of almost 22.9 billion. Compared to our 2022 budget, we got 24.4 billion in the 2022 GAA compared to our 44.149 billion proposal for GAA 2023. Now, for our utilization for the year 2020, we utilized 99.6% of the budget that was given us in GAA. The difference of 0.4 is due to the late release of the SAROS for PGH or MOOE, 0.6%, and for the equipment outlay of 0.7. So our total utilization budget utilization rate for the entire UP system is 99.6%. For 2021, it is at 87.4%. And the difference is because of the extension that was given to us in utilizing the funds that were given us in the 2021 GAA. For 2022, we are still at 35.3% budget utilization because our figures is at June 30 of 2020. Like the years before, we shall utilize more than 99% of this budget that was given to us in 2022. Now, for our disbursement budget utilization rate, for 2022, we were able to disburse 89.1% of the budget that was given to us. For 2021, it's 80.2% utilized, meaning paid out. And for 2022, we are 90.6%, meaning the funds that were released to us and that we were able to obligate, 90% of that amount had already been paid. Now, for our total outlay, UP received a total of 25 million for capital outlay in the 2023 budget. Compared to what we received, capital outlay in 2022. 2022, we received a total of billion, 2.5, around 5 or 6 billion. For 2023, only the amount of 25 million given to us as capital outlay in the NEP 2020. For there is an increase in our PS. The increase is to address the salary standardization law adjustments mandated by that law. For our performance, our ranking performance for 2022 in the THE World University Rankings, we are ranked 601, and the nearest other Philippine university is ranked at 1,201. For the QS World University Ranking, UP is ranked 399. And the nearest behind us, Philippine University, is ranked at 601 to 615. For the QS Asia University ranking, out of the 687 universities that were ranked, UP ranked number 77. And no other Philippine university was ranked among the 687. So that's all for our presentation, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please, as I said, no, we'll ask our questions later. So please be sure you and your team are there. I'd also like your vice chancellors to be available for my questions later, or at least for you to be able to confer with them. So on that note, let's move on to the last presentation. Chairman Popo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Since this is the start of a new administration, let me start by giving a briefer of where we stand now and what we have accomplished over the past couple of years. Next slide, please. The outline of the presentation is divided into four. The higher education landscape, and this shows the status of higher education today, major accomplishments of the Commission, the budget performance of over the past fiscal years, and the 2023 NEP. Next slide, please. For the higher education landscape, there are currently 2,377 schools, both public and private, nationwide. In terms of the next slide, please. In terms of private universities, out of the more than 2,000, there are 1,729 private universities with 2.2 million students enrolled spread across the country. Next slide. There are 114 state universities and colleges spread across 546 campuses nationwide with an enrollment of about 1.8 million students. Next slide. And 136 local universities and colleges with an enrollment of 395,000 students. Next slide, please. We graduated 345,000 students in academic year 2020-2021. 54.23% of these graduates come from private universities. 37% come from state universities and colleges, and almost 8% coming from local universities and colleges. Next slide, please. The good news about our higher education performance over the past years is we have gone through the impact already of the inclusion of senior high in our educational system. There was a small dip starting academic year 2017. We've gone through that already, and our participation rate has dramatically increased beyond the participation rate before the inclusion of senior high. So 40% of those who are supposed to be college-aged students are actually enrolled in higher education institutions. Much of this is credited to the passage by Congress, by our education champions, including our chair of the committee, and also other support systems that the government has given to higher education. Next slide, please. Our plan for the next 6 years builds upon what we have done over the past 6 years, and this is to promote equitable access to higher education, ensure quality of programs, and assert the relevance of higher education institutions. Next slide, please. For the major accomplishments over the past 2 fiscal years, the Department of Budget and Management has commended CHED's performance budget-wise for 2 years in a row. For our 2020 budget performance, the DBM noted that in the midst of the pandemic, we have been able to prove our flexibility and capacity to deliver beyond our commitments which was needed according to the DBM during the pandemic. In the latest assessment of DBM, next slide please, for budget year 2021, the DBM noted that CHED achieved 92% obligation versus allotment in fiscal year 2021, which is higher than the performance in 2020 of 82%. When I took over as chair of CHED, Madam Chair, the budget performance of CHED was at 78%. Several programs of CHED had very high financial performance, including universal access to quality tertiary education at 99%, student financial assistance programs at more than 90%, and subsidy for tuition fees of medical students and SUCs at 68%. Some of the reasons why the budget performance dramatically improved is because we shifted to cash-based budgeting starting 2020. That means we have synchronized the budget by fiscal year, not anymore by academic year, which was the problem previously. So that the budget performance of CHED was only about 50% when we go to Congress because only half of the academic year has finished. We have also directly released funds to the regional offices for the implementation of our subsidy programs for students. And this makes it easier for our regional offices to download the funds to the individual HEIs or to pay it directly to our student beneficiaries. Next slide, please. The major accomplishments of CHED as a result of these 2 good years of budget performance is we have improved access to quality higher education, so the implementation of the free higher education law. We have continued to push for quality and excellence of HEIs. We have made sure that all of the laws passed by Congress have their necessary IRR. And we have aggressively pushed for vaccination during the pandemic so that we can slowly reopen our schools for face-to-face classes. Next slide. So for access to higher education today, 2.6 million students are assisted by government in several ways. Million of them do not anymore pay tuition and miscellaneous fees. And 364,000 of the students in academic year 2020-2022 received their tertiary education subsidy, and 229,000 students got their tulong dunong grants. Next slide, please. The other good news is that if you look at the distribution of the tests, the majority of test grantees actually come from private universities. Unlike what was worried about before, that free higher ed would only subsidize state universities and colleges, there are more test grantees in private schools than in public universities. That means government is assisting both public and private students through the tertiary education subsidy and also through tulong dunong. Next slide, please. The other good news is that if you look at the distribution of test grantees, there's a very strong correlation in the number of test grantees correlated with the poor areas of the country. In the areas where there is high poverty incidence, there tend to be more test grantees. So that the region where there are the least test grantees is NCR. But you look at BARM, Region 11, Region 9, and the other Region 8, the areas where there is significant poverty incidence, that is where we also have a lot of test beneficiaries. That means higher education not only improves access to quality education, it also tends to assist those who need the assistance the most. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, for quality and excellence, we have continued to push for the improvement of both state universities and also local colleges. Next slide, please. And in terms of quality and excellence, we have aggressively pushed for the internationalization of our state universities and colleges. There are currently 45 higher education institutions included in globally recognized international rankings and 1,527 linkages between Philippine universities and world-ranked universities. Next slide. We're happy to report to the Senate that aside from the usual Philippine universities that are ranked in the Times Higher Education, there are now 15 Philippine universities ranked in the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. Next slide. Okay, 15 universities ranked in the world university ranking and 12 higher education institutions ranked in the World University Real Impact Ranking. Many of these universities, both public and private, previously were not very aggressive in internationalization. They did not know what it takes to become competitive and ranked with the other universities in the region and the world. And they have all understood the criteria and what is measured in rankings and have subjected themselves to evaluation. We expect another 5 to 8 Philippine universities to soon join this ranking as many more are being evaluated for their QS stars. Next slide, please. For quality and excellence, from 2016 to 2021, we provided more than 9,000 scholarships for faculty members to continue their studies at the masteral and doctoral level. We have reconceptualized our scholarship program. It is now called SICAP, and 1,500 faculty members of both public and private universities are now enjoying scholarships. We have expanded our scholarship to cover part-time faculty, and even those who lost their jobs because of COVID can take on scholarships so that when the economy improves, they can get back and be re-employed. We thank our members of the Senate for continuously providing funding for the scholarship and continuing professional development of our faculty members. Next slide, please. We have aligned many of our policies and curriculum with industry and market needs. We have issued more than 100 new curriculum or PSGs for the degree programs after senior high was incorporated in the K-12 program. And we have entered into partnerships with other government agencies to make sure we do better supply and demand forecasting of what is needed so that we can listen to industry on what kind of competencies our graduates should have. And we continue to fund projects for niche programs that we have so that the competitiveness of our graduates continue to improve. Next slide, please. Of course, we have lifted the moratorium on the opening of new nursing programs recently. For quality and excellence, we have provided grants to state universities and colleges for the Smart Campus program and given a total of about almost 2 billion to fund projects in our universities for the implementation of various projects, including improving instructional facilities or laboratories, smart campus development, etc. The IDIG is sourced from both the Higher Education Development Fund and also the GAA in the previous years. Next slide, please. For legislative mandates, we have issued the guidelines for NBC 461, 8th cycle. This is being implemented now in our various state universities and colleges. And pursuant to the special provision of the 2022 GAA, CHED has finished crafting the guidelines for the next cycle, and we are awaiting the signature of the DBM secretary for NBC 9th cycle, so this can be issued and the 9th cycle evaluation can start. We have issued IRR for all the major laws that Congress has passed, including Dr. Pasabayan, transnational higher education, the Advanced Energy and Green Building Technologies Curriculum, Labor Education, and the LUDIP Act. Next slide, please. We know that Dr. Parasabayan is particularly important to the Senate. And so we'd like to inform our senators that medical scholarships and return service program for partner higher education institutions now includes 15 public universities and 16 private HEIs in areas where there are few or no state university offering a medical program. There are currently more than 1,600 grantees for our Dr. Parasabayan program. And aside from the 15 state universities and colleges, there are 6 state universities and colleges that are being evaluated right now for their proposal to offer a medical program, and we expect that these 6 will be on stream soon. We have also been able to give funding in the seed fund for medical programs so that our state universities and colleges will have good equipment such as plasticized mannequins, anatomy tables, and other equipment needed for their schools. Next slide, please. And of course, we are proud that we have been able to dramatically increase the vaccination rate of our students and faculty higher than the national average so we can go back to the classroom. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, for the 2021 continuing budget appropriation, as mentioned by DBM earlier, in their assessment, our budget utilization was 92%. We're now up to 96% budget utilization, and we commit to Congress that we will increase this further with payables that need to be given out in the last 3 months of the year. Next slide, please. For our 2022 budget obligation and disbursement, we admit that our obligation rate is still slow at a little less than 30%. This is because we just received the money coming from DBM for our free higher education. We just got our 3 billion last week. And this is being disbursed now to the different parts of the country. So we expect that this obligation rate will dramatically increase. Of course, we still have money that will be released from DBM for other activities that we have for the rest of the year. Next slide, please. We have also increased our utilization of the HEDF fund for tourism from 7% in 2018 when Congress brought to our attention that we're not prioritizing tourism-related projects in the use of HEDF. We're now up to 28%. Next slide, please. The significant changes in the utilization for 2020 and 2021 is really, as we said earlier, because we do better planning, we vet and approve projects earlier, we increase disbursement for many of our projects. Next slide, please. So for the 2023 NEP, we got 30.7 billion for 2023. Next slide, please. Comparing this to 2022 GAA, we have a reduction of 6% reduction in our GAA compared to our previous year. Next slide, please. The summary of changes are as follows. Because our budget was decreased for 2 years now, in 2023, there's a decrease in funding for student financial assistance programs of 305 million. A decrease in the funding for free higher education by almost 300 million pesos. We don't have funding for the following legislative mandates. We have no funding for the institutionalization of the Philippine Qualification Framework, no funding for research and scholarship programs because the PICARI project has ended already, no funding for the LUDIP monitoring and evaluation, decrease in funding for the Legal Education Board, no funding for the SEED Fund for the development of medical schools, and all our Tier 2 projects of the HEDF was disapproved by the DBM. Next slide, please. So in summary, Madam Chair, this is not really our wish list. These are the options we are presenting to the Senate. We broke down the options into several funding brackets. First, because in the 2022 GAA, as approved, the reimbursement of free higher education tuition and miscellaneous fees was taken out of the CHED budget and given directly to SUCs. Unfortunately, while the amount was taken out, the amount that was supposed to be allocated for local universities and colleges remained with CHED even with the reduced budget. That means for 2022, we don't have any new test beneficiaries. We don't have funds for new test beneficiaries. We can only fund continuing test beneficiaries for 2022. We don't have funds for local universities and colleges that have just been approved by CHED, and we don't have funds for private schools who are for new grantees in private schools where there is no SUC and LUC. In the 2023 NEP, we have the same situation. So we don't have any new test grantees. We don't have any new grantees for students in private schools with no LUCs and no SUCs. And we don't have funding to reimburse the the tuition and miscellaneous fees of 6 local universities and colleges that have just passed the standards of CHED. So on the next column, we put several options for the Senate to act on. If the budget is intended to cover the newly approved local universities and colleges, we will need a little over 200 million pesos. For option 2, if the budget is intended to cover new listahanan 2.0 grantees, we need 4.3 billion pesos. For option 3, if the budget is intended to cover the test grantees in studying in private higher education institutions under the no-SUC, no-LOC category, we need 5.8 billion. And if Congress wants to cover all the funds needed for free higher education, we need about 10 billion pesos. We also would like to bring to the attention of the Senate that unlike in the previous year where money was given so that we could assist the new universities that have medical programs with equipment and teaching materials, there is no funding for that. There is also no funding for the institutionalization of the PQF. We thank the Senate for putting 50 million in budget year 2022. There is no funding for that in 2023. And in LUDIP, we don't have any funds for LUDIP. We request that Congress augment this by about 28.5 million pesos so that we can assist the state universities and colleges with the completion of their land use development and infrastructure program. Thank you, Madam Chair. That ends my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Popoy. So we now open the floor in accordance with the arrival of our colleagues and of course the officers of the Senate. May I recognize first Senator Risa Hontiveros who arrived during the presentation.
Salamat, Madam Chair. Magandang
Yes.
hapon.
Good afternoon. So we'll recognize first our officer present who is our Majority Floor Leader, Senator Joel Villanueva. And then after that, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian and then Senator Risa. Of course, our Chairman, Senator Sonny, is monitoring so he can, I'm sure he'll interject. He's welcome to interject anytime. So if until he says so, I think we can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very quick. I'm sure you would cover a lot of my issues here, including the UPCAT and all. Perhaps I would just dwell in just one topic so we can expedite the process. First of all, thank you for being here in this hearing. Our friends from DAP, UP, PASUC, headed by President Tirso, CHED, headed by our good friend Secretary Popoy. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Isang issue na gusto ko lamang pong pagtuunan ng pansin, itong Doktor para sa Bayan law that we passed. All of us here, 4 senators physically present, actually supported and worked very hard for the passage of this law. And I remember during the time when we were debating on this particular measure, we had this data coming from WHO that the ideal number of doctors is to have at least 10 doctors per 10,000 in population. But in our case, during that time, we only have 3 doctors attending to 10,000 Filipinos. And the ideal is 10 doctors per 10,000. And so during the time, I remember we were talking about the importance of producing at least about 12,165 doctors every year in order for us to reach that ideal number in the next 10 years. But unfortunately, as I was listening attentively to the presentation of our Secretary Popoy de Vera, parang nabawasan pa no ng husto itong ating pondo. So perhaps, Madam Chair, my first question would be, since the passage of the measure, do we have the data as to how many doctors are we producing now and the ratio that we were talking about? The ideal is 10 doctors per 10,000, but during the time when we were deliberating this measure, it was only 3 doctors per 10,000. In fact, in some other areas in the country, especially in the BARM area, there were about point something, not even 1 doctor per 10,000 population. I'm not sure if we have a data right now. That's my first question. And second question, I'd like to raise na rin, Madam Chair, looking at the GAA for 2022, we had about 500 million allocation dito sa Doktor para sa Bayan. Now, this year, kalahati po yung nawala. Ang allotment is only 250 million. So my next question is, how will this budget affect the number of current new grantees of the program, Your Honors? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We cannot compute yet how many new doctors we have because we only started funding scholarships actually in 2021. A little earlier than that for the scholarship exclusively by CHED and DOH. So right now, there are only 1,325 scholars being funded through our scholarship program. That would be my answer to the first question. No? The actual number of doctors that we have in terms of the need is of course available at the Department of Health for the government positions that are available. For the second question, what is the impact of the reduction? Ang natanggal po ay yung 250 million last GAA, which we gave as grants to the universities to buy anatomy tables, plasticized cadavers, mannequins that they will use for the classroom. Nabigyan po natin lahat nung bagong nagbukas last year. Ang difference this year, wala tayong ibibigay na bagong teaching aid o teaching materials para sa kanila. The 250 that remains in the budget is for the scholarship program for the doktor para sa bayan.
So you mean the seed fund, Secretary? I'm sorry to interject. You mean the seed fund? You're talking about the seed fund. So it's
Yes,
zero.
Yun po ang nawala. Yung seed fund, walang seed fund for this year unlike
From
last year.
250 million to zero. Is that correct? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Majority Leader, wala pong nakalagay. Kaya yung pong
Unfortunate.
bagong bukas na tatlong SUC at yung naghihintay pa na 6 na SUC na magbubukas, wala po tayong maibibigay sa kanilang mga equipment na kailangan nila.
That's so unfortunate, no, Madam Chair, Secretary, because we have been working hard in motivating and encouraging our SUCs to actually participate as we pass this measure, to participate and actually apply for School of Medicine. And I know the efforts being put in by our CHED officials doon sa process nila, ini-expedite. Tapos ngayong makapasa sila after undergoing the scrutiny of CHED, wala palang pondong ibibigay. I'll go to that later, Secretary, Madam Chair. Yung current...
Madam Chair, can I add one more, yung impact?
Please.
Yung nakalagay na 250 do sa GAA ngayon, kakapusin din po para sa scholarship ng mga ina-anticipate na papasok na bagong mga universities. Kasi merong
That's what I'm about to ask right now, because that's what I'm going to ask right now, Secretary, because you were saying right now we only have 1,325 grantees ng scholarship, no? Pero dun sa kaninang presentation, ang nakita ko po 1,605, no? Paki-clarify lang po. So ang next question ko po, how many are ongoing scholars na ano mangyayari sa kanila kung mababawasan yung pondo? Mababawasan ba o may matatanggal ba doon sa programa natin na scholar ngayon and then next year mawawalan sila ng scholarship?
Madam Chair, let me explain the 1.6 versus the 1.13, no? The 1.6 includes the old scholars of CHED which were already being given tuition fee discounts before the Doktor para sa Bayan Law. That used to be funded by a congressional realignment of about 167 million annually. So ang ginawa po natin, pinagpatuloy ubusin yung pera na natitira pa for the continuing scholars of CHED. Yung 1,300 po, yan yung Doktor para sa Bayan scholars na. So pag tinotal mo yung dalawa, it's a little over 1,600. So yung 250 na nakalagay for budget year or for the NEP, kakasya pa naman yung existing scholars. Pero wala na po tayong pondo para do sa bubuksan ng mga bagong programa. Kasama ho yung 3 bagong approve at saka yung 6 na nakapila. Yun hong kanilang mga estudyante ay hindi natin mabibigyan ng scholarship dahil kakapusin na po yung 250 million. We need an additional 145 million so that we can cover the new students or the new grantees of the schools that are just opening or will be open because their evaluation is almost complete now and ready for the deliberation of the commission.
Thank you, Secretary, for clarifying that. So you're talking about at least 145 million for new students, new scholars, dun sa mga na-approve na mga excited na magbenepisyo dito sa programa na ito ng pamahalaan na alam natin very important that would help our healthcare system. And wala pa po dyan sa 145 million yung seed fund naman para sa mga eskwelahan. We wanted to get some of the figures because you are seeing 4 education champions here in the Senate physically present and wanting to find out how we could be of help. And of course, our chairperson of the Committee on Finance is also around. Baka pwedeng makuha lang yung data about it, Secretary.
Madam Chair, yun pong para sa equipment nung meron ho kaming pondo galing sa CHED noong 2021 ng mga 148 million which we allocated for projects. In 2022, there was a congressional realignment of 251 million. So actually, we've been giving equipment for 2 fiscal years already to our universities. We can assure you that when our public universities open their medical programs, they will have equipment that is comparable to those being used in private schools. Kasi ang sabi po namin sa CHED, huwag dapat tayong masanay do sa thinking na pagka-gobyerno mas pangit ang ginagamit na equipment. Meron naman tayong pondo. So ang kanila pong mga anatomy table, plasticized mannequins, etc. are state of the art and can compete with those in private schools. They're using the same equipment. So for 2 years, we have given them. For this year, wala po kaming maibibigay kasi pati sa budget ng CHED dati na meron, nawala na rin po.
Yeah, because you were saying 2021 may 150 million na seed fund, 2022 250 million na seed fund. Now this year 2023 it's 0. Is that correct, Your Honor?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Your Honor, you made mention, I was listening to your presentation, ito yung CHED presentation, and it says here you were able to release 399 million for the procurement of equipment for the medical program of SUCs 2021-2022. For clarification lang, baka pwedeng pattern off nung party line natin, please. For clarification, when CHED stated in its presentation that it was able to release itong 399 million under the seed fund for the procurement of equipment for SUC's medical programs, what does that mean? And how much are directly related to establishing and operating medical schools in the country?
The 399 is a total of the 2021 and 2022 list of projects. Lahat po ito ay equipment purchase for our state universities and colleges.
Na-procure na po ito, Secretary?
Except for na-approve na po lahat, pero meron pang hindi na po procure kasi katatanggap lang namin yung pera galing sa DBM. Pero yung 150 last year, yan po na-procure tsaka nakuha na yan, nandun na sa mga schools yan. Itong 250 na-approve na lahat, kalahating taon nang na-approve, pero ngayon pa lang namin sinisimula ibigay yung pera kasi katatanggap lang po namin.
Okay. Baka pwedeng hingin na lang po kami ng kopya, Secretary, yung status po niyan. Opo. I wanted to leave this issue, but perhaps we can talk about the per capita cost, Secretary, cost per scholar under the Dr. Para sa
Majority
Bayan.
Floor Leader, before you leave the topic, I'll just include, because it's the same topic, no, on the seed fund. To be clear, yung 250 million in the 2022 budget is our congressional amendment. Tayo yan.
Hindi yan, ano.
And yeah, yung kasama ng mga colleagues natin.
Thank
And
you.
I'm pretty certain in 2021, it was also ours. So if you follow the logic of DBM, basta it's a congressional initiative, hindi nila pinopondohan. So we need your help here din naman, Chairman, and now we have a new DBM Secretary. I've pointed these things out to her na institutional na siya. It's based on a law. So let's help each other here because we're speaking to the choir. But I wanted to put on record that the reason that there has been funding is because of, well, it's a Senate initiative. I know that the House supported it also. So we're happy that we have our colleagues' support on that. Sige, you may proceed, sir. I just wanted
Yeah,
to put
and
that on
to
record.
put on record, ayaw sabihin ng ating chair, Madam Chair, na siya yung talagang very passionate about this in pushing for the funds na needed for Dr. Para sa Bayan law, and that's why we're very grateful for the leadership of Senator Pia and Senator Sani. Secretary, balikan ko yung question, no, yung per capita cost per scholar, kasi po, I remember during the debates, umaabot hanggang kalahating milyon kada isang taon for the next 5 years yung gastos sa isang School of Medicine na pang-private, no. I'm just wanted to put on record pagka public magkano, because if I look at the average number of medical graduates per year, which is about 4,000, and looking at if CHED is offering 920 slots per 250 million, correct me if I'm wrong, if with my figures that I'm looking at, the per capita cost would be around 271,000 per student per year, which is way below the estimated cost of medical education. Is this still the the figures that we are looking at? Kasi it's again, no, it's unacceptable, 250 million, tapos tinanggal pa yung seed fund, and we're going to encourage and rally our colleagues here in the Senate to do something about this particular item. Secretary, can we hear from you?
Yeah, you're correct, Mr. Majority Leader, kasi sa SUCs, mura ang tuition eh. Kaya yung subsidy na o yung binibigyan nating funding for their studies is much lower because these are government rates. Doon sa meron tayong kapartner na ilang private university in areas where there are no SUCs, doon ho mas mataas ang ating subsidy kasi we give them a maximum of 100,000 pesos per semester. Pag sumobra po do yung tuition ng private school, ang usapan namin, kayo na sumagot ng difference. Ganun po ang usapan. So there are I think 16 private schools that are now partnering with CHED so that their students can also avail of Dr. Para sa Bayan law. Doon sa mga lugar na wala pa tayong SUCs na may medical program. So medyo mas mataas doon kasi mas mataas yung rates ng tuition nila, Madam Chair.
Thank you. One last issue perhaps that I would like to raise in this particular topic on Dr. Para sa Bayan law. We laud the efforts of CHED. I remember when we were discussing this measure, there were only 8 state college universities offering School of Medicine. Right now, we have 15 SUCs. And in the law that we passed, doon po sa Section 12 ng Republic Act number 11509, nakalagay po doon na ang CHED in coordination with the OH is mandated to establish at least one state-operated medical school in each region in the country within 5 years from the effectivity of this act. Right now, we have about 12 regions, and thank you and congratulations. No, 12 regions na po yung meron. Pero tinitingnan ko po yung regions ng Cordillera, Caraga, and my beloved region, Region 3. Wala po ni isang aplikante as of this time. Is that correct, Your Honor?
Doon po sa
Nakalungkot naman.
Sa Region 3, meron pong nagbabakasakali, yung Don Honorio Bintura State University. Pero sila ay, kwan pa lang, nagbe-benchmarking pa lang sila. They have not formally applied. Those who have formally applied and are being evaluated include Don Mariano Marcos Memorial State University in Region 1, Isabela State University in Region 2, Southern Luzon State University in Calabarzon, Palawan State University in Mimaropa, Bohol Island State University in Region 7, and University of Science and Technology of Southern Philippines in Region 10. Yun po yung on process yung evaluation. Doon po sa CAR, ang Benguet State ang nagsabi na pinag-aaralan nila kung kaya nila. At sa Caraga, yung Caraga State University. But these are all prospective candidates. They are still benchmarking with the other universities whether they can open a program. Ang ginawa po natin doon sa CAR dahil wala pa, the Board of Regents of Mariano Marcos State University decided that they will reserve certain slots in their medical school exclusively for students coming from CAR, while waiting for a medical program to offer in the Cordillera. So meron ho silang inalat na number of slots. Plus, we entered into agreement with St. Louis University in the Cordillera so they could offer scholarship to their students. So meron naman po sa CAR, private university lang at saka merong slots sa Mariano Marcos State University, which is the closest to, Cordillera on the western side.
Yes, I mentioned that, Secretary, because I also was given a chance to talk to Benguet State University, NEUST in Nueva Ecija, Bulacan State University with President Gascon. So I hope kung matuloy at gagawa naman natin ng paraan siguro, no? We'll rally our colleagues here in the Senate dun sa seed fund, etc. Baka pwedeng ma-prioritize yung mga regions na talagang at to this time ay wala pa rin na medical school or university, state college universities offering School of Medicine. Napansin ko lang, Secretary De Vera, no? Yung last budget deliberation, you were saying and you stated that the merging of existing medical scholarships will take place in 2022 ng CHED and DOH. And I was looking at the numbers here, no? It was reported that there were 2,890 scholars from 2019 to 2020, including 1,749 scholars from CHED and 1,141 scholars from DOH. Tapos yung numbers kanina na binigay po ninyo, parang ang dating sa akin, Secretary and dear colleagues, Madam Chair, pababa yung medical scholars natin. Is that correct, Your Honor?
Yun pong binabanggit kong numbers ay scholars lamang ng CHED.
Okay,
Hindi po
okay.
kasama dyan yung scholars ng DOH kasi pinagdudugtong pa lang po ng CHED at DOH yung master list ng scholars. So I'm identifying scholars only funded through the GAA of CHED, Madam Chair.
Yes, but the Doktor para sa Bayan law states that CHED will take the cudgels, no? Kayo yung mangunguna, and ngayon po hindi pa po na-merge yung listahan, Secretary. And when is our target?
Ang usapan po namin ng DOH ay patatapusin na lang nila yung kanilang mga scholar. Hindi na sila tumatanggap ng bagong scholar. So all new scholars for medical scholarships will now be covered under the funding that is made in CHED.
Okay, so it means to show na hindi naman nababawasan yung mga scholars natin year by year, no? Nadadagdagan pa rin naman, Secretary.
Yeah, nadadagdagan po, nadadagdagan.
One last, yung binanggit nyo kanina, PQF, 50 million lang, hindi pa binigay ng DBM?
Nasa amin na ho yung 50 million. Naka-program na, may mga activities na kami. We'd like to also thank Senator Villanueva. May konting movement na ho sa relasyon ng TESDA at saka CHED, lalo na doon sa
But that's 2022, Secretary, no? Yung 2023 yung wala.
2023 wala po.
And for the same reason, to my dear colleague, that is our congressional initiative. So,
Madam Chair, I'd like to assure you that every time we submit the NEP, we prioritize the legislative initiatives because our contention is that this will become unfunded mandates if they are not automatically incorporated in the CHED budget. Pero hindi pa rin po kami pinagbibigyan.
I think lang, no, baka you can give us a slide. I don't think I caught it, no. I want a slide that shows kung ano yung unfunded. Ilagay mo ng separate column at lagyan mo ng magagandang kulay yung column na yon, yung congressional initiative. Pero para klaro na papakita na ito, batas to. So dapat to nafa-fund, no. Pakigawan niyo na lang kami ng slide na ganon. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, yung last 3 slides namin nandoon, yung LUDIP, PQF.
It specifically says that it's a legislative mandate.
Yes, yes. Madam
Okay,
Chair.
all right, sige, thank you. I saw that nga, I just didn't realize that it was lumped together. Sige, thank you.
Madam Chair, to wrap up lang, no? I'm just discouraged na yung Doktor para sa Bayan Law, nawalan ng seed fund. Itong PQF, we have been I wasn't a senator yet, and I remember, Madam Chair, you're the one pushing for this in the Senate before I became a senator. And then in the 19th Congress, if I'm not mistaken, we were able to pass this with the help of Senator Sherwin Gatchalian and Senator Risa Ontiveros. And this is very important. In fact, in the 2021 World Bank review on the Philippines, in this PQF, they noted that quality assurance practices managed separately by the 3 agencies of the government, itong education sectors, tend to overlook itong skills acquired through non-standard forms of education and training. And this is also being espoused by our chairman on finance, si Senator Angara. I'm sure you have heard him saying that. Tapos yung same World Bank study also noted the awareness of PQF among stakeholders is very low, and few awareness-enhancing campaigns and activities have taken place so far to increase understanding and acceptance of the Philippine Qualifications Framework. So I hope na hindi lang magamit itong 2022 budget na finally na-release na sa CHED, being the head of PQF Technical Working Group for Pathways and Equivalencies, kundi yung for next year, dapat meron yan tuloy-tuloy at napakahalaga nitong batas na ito na ating ipinasa at hindi naman natin ito ipinasa just for the sake na maipasa lang, no? Napakahalaga nitong batas na ito. So, Madam Chair, yun na lamang po ako, and let me just state for the record my dismay also looking at the budget of our PASUC, yung mga SUCs natin na masyadong glaring, yung 74% ng ating mga SUCs lower than per capita cost, no? And I hope and pray na we can do something about it. This representation vowed to help out and support our chairperson of this subcommittee, the chairperson of finance, to look on ways and means on how we'll be able to improve the budget of our SUCs. Yan na lang yung tanging pag-asa na tinitingnan ng ating mga kababayan na nais magkaroon ng edukasyon at makatapos ng tertiary education. So I hope na mapagtuunan po ito ng pansin. Maraming salamat, Madam Chair. Thank you, Secretary De Vera, and dear colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you,
Madam
Majority
Chair,
Floor
Madam
Leader.
Chair.
Yes.
Here, before Senator Villanueva leaves, kasi PQF champion siya, let me just inform the Senate that TESDA and CHED have already agreed and have put in place a credit transfer system in pilot priority sectors: dental medicine, agriculture and biosystems, engineering, IT, and hospitality management. And we are now interfacing also on PQF level 5. So meron naman pong
Thank you.
magagandang development sa PQF.
Thank you. Sige. Let's move on. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian has the floor. Thank you. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, let me just I'll go to my questions, Madam Chair. Chair Popoy, nakita ko na yung ating TES na bawasan, no? And I just want to go into the beneficiaries of the TES. Ilan po ang beneficiaries natin under the listahanan category?
For what year?
For the current year?
Dito po sa 2022-2023, wala ho tayong bagong test grantees. So our last is for academic year 2021-2022 na lang po ang meron. That's approximately 229,000 in the first semester and a little dip, 223,000 in the second semester of academic year 2021-2022. We have not opened applications for academic year 2022 because there's no fund. And in 2023, there is also no new application. So by 2023, we will only have 2 cohorts of test grantees. The third year and fourth year cohort na lang, Madam Chair.
Yeah, let me just repeat it, Chair Popoy. I understand that the TES did not receive funding for 2023. Tama po ba? 290 new funding, 296 million.
For 2 years now, Madam Chair, even last year, our budget was reduced. So for academic year 2022, we don't have any new grantees.
Okay.
And in the 2023 NEP, our budget was further reduced. So we will not be able to fund also new test grantees in 2023-2024.
Okay. So I just want to compare that with the applications, no? Because let's go with the current number of test grantees. Ang current number is about 594. Tama po ba? The current beneficiaries right now.
Kasama na po ang tulong dunong dun sa number na yon.
For test lang po, for test.
For test, it is 364,000 beneficiaries, Madam Chair.
And then how many applicants po for the last 2 years? Hindi po natin natanggap because of no increase in budget. What I'm trying to drive at is how many students were deprived of the TES because of non-increase in budget. No?
Ang test applicants natin for no. Yeah, per the data from UniFast, Mr. Chair, for students in private universities with no looks, no SUCs, the test applicants that cannot be covered is about 192,000. For students in Listahanan 2.0, about 134,000. And students in Listahanan in private universities, about 52,000 applicants, Madam Chair.
So
It's
that's
about 379,000 applicants are not covered, but they are qualified.
So in other words, Chair Popoy, 379,000 students were deprived of free education because we did not allocate additional funds for TES. And these
Hindi naman po, kasi yung mga listahanan sa public, libre na ang tuition tsaka miscellaneous nila. They were deprived of additional tuition assistance or additional financial assistance by the government. So for those that are in private universities with no SUCs, no looks, wala po silang pambayad ng tuition tsaka miscellaneous fees nila because they're studying in private schools. Also, the listahanan 2.0, poor students who are in private schools, they also cannot pay their tuition and miscellaneous because there's no funds available.
correct.
Those
So
in SUCs, they can still go to school, but they have no additional subsidy anymore for their other educational needs.
So doon po sa 379 who were not given TES, ilan po doon ang wala rin pong tuition subsidy and additional support?
Doon po sa students in private schools who are part of listahanan 2.0, 52,000 are not covered, and students in private universities in cities and municipalities with no SUCs, no looks, 192,000. So these two batches do not receive any financial assistance, and therefore they run the risk of not being able to study anymore because they have no money to pay tuition and miscellaneous fees, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that's 226,000. Tama po ba? The first two categories.
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right. And then, so the 226,000 students were deprived of free college education because government did not allocate additional funds. No.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yeah. How much do we need to service those 226,000 students?
Doon ho sa binigay ko do sa presentation, doon ho sa options on the second paragraph, if we're going to cover the free tuition and miscellaneous of students in newly recognized looks, we need 200 million. Yun hong mga kapapasa pa lang ng requirements ng CHED, they cannot give free tuition to their students because they are not assured of reimbursement coming from the commission. Doon sa new listahanan grantees, approximately 4.3 billion pesos for those that are in listahanan 2.0, and for those in no SUC, no look, we need about 5.8 billion pesos, Madam Chair.
So magkano ho in total?
Ako
Those you
i-cover po lahat, mga 10.3 billion pesos, kung i-cover natin yung tatlong option.
But yung dalawang option lang po, yung 226,000. Because those talaga wala nakukuha eh. Therefore, I assume they're not studying.
So, anong ka? 10.2. Yeah, it's a little, it's about 10 billion.
It's about 10 billion pa rin.
Kasi ang tatanggalin lang natin yung dun sa 6 looks.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
10 billion. So that's the target that we need to raise, Mr. Chairman, and I'm with you in making sure that our students are studying and the spirit of the law is being faithfully implemented by granting them free college tuition. And unfortunately, we're depriving 226,000 of education because government did not allocate for the increase in terms of funding. So that's we're with you, and we're going to find ways to fund that 10 billion. But I just want to put that on record because we need to know and put on record how many students are not being given free college education because of budget. The next is, Mr. Chair, is in the reduction, I also heard earlier from the briefing that 5 LUCs also were not uh, will not enjoy free college education. How many students, first of all, sino-sino itong 5 LUCs? And Chairman, alam natin, getting the institutional accreditation from CHED is really very challenging and tough. No? And a lot of our LUCs really work very hard to fulfill the institutional recognition, which is very important, and I support that. I think it's very important that we make sure that our LUCs are up to the standards. But unfortunately, those who qualify will still not enjoy free higher education privileges. So I just want to put on record which 5 LUCs will not receive free higher education, and how many students are we talking about with that 5 new LUCs?
Madam Chair, the estimated number of students is 17,000, and the 6 new CHED-recognized LUCs that will not get any reimbursement of free higher education is the City College of San Jose del Monte, Gapan City College, La Carlota City College, Colegio de Getafe, Tagbilaran City College, and Colegio de Ciudad de Zamboanga. They have all passed the evaluation of the commission, and their names have been submitted and recognized by UNIFAST, but we don't have any money to reimburse their tuition and miscellaneous fees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And like I said earlier, even Valenzuela, when we went through that institutional accreditation, it was really difficult. It took us almost 2 years to fulfill the requirements, which is important. I think all the LUCs should pass through this institutional accreditation, and they should also work hard to fulfill all the requirements. But after fulfilling all the requirements, malalaman nila na wala pa rin free tuition fee, and this is actually quite disappointing for a lot of the LUCs who are trying to get themselves accredited to this point. And I've talked to a lot of them seeking assistance to CHED in terms of accreditation. So, but on top of that, the most important is the 17,000 students who will not receive or will not enjoy the free tuition, because what will happen right now is it's either status quo on the ground, meaning the LUCs will still require tuition fee, or the LUC, the local governments will pay for the tuition fee, which will affect other services demand. So, but then, again, we're with you in trying to find additional funding, and I'm sure that our able chairman of the subcommittee on education will find ways, and we'll work together to find ways to fund that. But Mr. Chair, how much is the requirement just for the LUCs out of just to put on record?
It's 200 million pesos, Madam Chair, with an estimated 17,000 students.
Thank you, Chairman, for that. And rest assured, we'll also try to look for other ways to fund that. Just to focus on listahanan, Mr. Chair, because listahanan is the poorest of the poor. No, I think this is the poorest or the 10th quintile poorest families. How many have applied for free education but were not granted free education subsidies?
Our estimate Madam Chair, for those who applied and are qualified in public and private universities, it's about 186,000 students. 134,860 in public and 52,129 in private schools. These are estimates of applicants that are qualified, Madam Chair.
For the public, they are studying, no, because they are enjoying.
Yes, they are enjoying free tuition and miscellaneous already.
For the private, they're not studying
Uh,
unless they pay for their own tuition.
Yes, they pay for their own, Madam Chair. Madami sa kanila, hindi magpapatuloy yan pag walang siguradong dadating na test kasi yung iba
Yes. Who rest the poor to eh.
nangungutang muna tapos saka na lang hintayin dumating yung test if they are qualified.
Yeah, how many are those in the private school for the listahanan?
About 52,129.
Okay. All right. Again, quite disappointing because these are poorest of the poor families. I note the success of CHED in increasing the number of beneficiaries in the poorest areas. But then again, this is another challenge that we need to fulfill: how to get those 52,000 students to school. No, and a lot of them are, tama ho kayo, nangungutang. A lot of them are also affected by the pandemic, more so that we need to extend assistance to them. So again, Mr. Chairman, Chair Popoy, we're with you, and we'll try hard to get this 226 students to school by giving them tuition fee subsidies. My next question, and this is to Mr. Tirso, to Dr. Tirso in the SUCs. I saw in the presentation earlier.
Go ahead.
Mr. Tirso?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Chair. Okay.
Doon po sa presentation ninyo, the free higher education as a whole also was reduced by 5.8 billion pesos, no? And this is actually connected to my question on TES. That 5.8 billion represents additional students. Tama po ba?
Actually, Mr. Chair, to give you a bit of background, this 2022 po, current year, short na rin po ang binigay sa atin. Parang around 18 billion lang po yung nabigay sa atin, but we need, I think, around 24,000. What we are surprised about, Mr. Chair, this coming 2023, the same allocation po ang binigay sa atin, katulad nung allocation sa FHC nung 2022, considering that we have an increase in enrollment. So, lalo pong lumaki ang kulang sa amin ngayon. We computed this based on our actual enrollment. Pero kulang po ang allocation, Mr. Chair. Thank you for noting this, Mr. Chair.
Professor Tirso, I want to capture the number, the same question, number of students who were deprived. No, I note that there is a natural increase in our state universities and colleges. I know that enrollment naturally goes up. And I also took note earlier in the CHED presentation, there were private schools who closed this year. I think there were in the presentation, just get my notes. Anyways, there were, I saw in the presentation earlier, there were private schools that closed this year. So naturally, the students will either move to another private school or state universities, no? Because they're free. So, ilan students po ang hindi ho na-accommodate because of the deficiency for 2 years already, for this year and for potentially for next year?
Mr. Chair, hindi pa naman po dumarating sa punto na hindi pa sila na-accommodate. In fact, ang deficiency po ng budget na inallocate sa amin kumpara sa aming actual enrollment ay mararamdaman pa po namin ngayong first semester na ito, the last portion of 2022. Kasi pag nag-bill kami kay DBM, since binibilang na DBM yung na-bill na namin sa kanila mula po nung first or second semester ng nakaraang school year, which comprised of the first part of this year 2022, plus yun pong summer namin na binil din natin kay DBM. So ngayon pong last billing namin, malalaman kung magkano yung kulang. Kasi halimbawa, kung ang kailangan namin ay 100 million, ang nabill namin, ang allocation ay 80 million. So pag nag-bill kami ng 100 million, sasabihin ng DBM, kulang ng 20 million. That's one thing that will affect our program of receipts and expenditure in our universities. Pinogram po namin sila accordingly. So hindi pa po namin nararamdaman ngayon ng blow, Mr. Chair.
No, I understand that, Dr. Tirso, but there's already 18 billion allocated. Tama po ba? For
Yes
2020?
po. Roughly, Mr. Chair, that accounts to 85% lang po.
Of the students?
Opo, ng aming
5 students of the 85% of your enrollment. Correct?
Roughly, Mr. Chair, we can associate it with that.
So the 15% will not get free tuition.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Ilan students ho yung 15%?
So that is siguro 15% of 1.85 million. So I am calculating, Mr. Chair.
Mga
So 0.15
yan po, mga 270?
Yes po. Yes po.
More or less, more or less.
More or less.
Yeah, more or less 200. So 270,000 po potentially hindi makakakuha ng free tuition.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Paano ho sila? What is now the recourse of those students?
Sa ngayon po kasi, hindi namin sila sinignan ng tuition. But they are
Correct.
still in our universities. So, since nasa amin na po sila,
School ang magbabayad.
opo, ang effect niyan, ang blow sa ating program of research and expenditure sa loob ng universidad. May mga programa na hindi namin maitutuloy.
Correct.
Or,
Tama ho. So school ang magbabayad ho niyan, 'di ba?
Yes, Mr.
Dr.
Chair.
Tirso.
yes, Mr. Chair, baka kulangin kami ng pampasunod sa
And
PS.
I think the answer there also is the quality of education suffers, 'di ba? Kasi kulang ang pondo nyo. Walang nagsasubsidize nung pagpasok ng batang yun eh. Yeah. Anyway, Senator Sherwin, your overtime. So if you can wrap up, you can have 2 or 3 or 4 rounds because I appreciate your questions, but I just want to give our colleagues the time to also ask questions before we have to go to session. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. I know we're running against time, Madam Chair. Actually, Madam Chair, that's my last question. I just want to put on record the number of students that were deprived of free college education and that will be deprived. So I will assume, Dr. Tirso, this coming school year, the same amount, maybe a little bit more, mga 300,000 students will be deprived of free college education. And the impact to that, and what our chairperson mentioned earlier, is cash flow. The cash flow of our SUCs will be affected because the SUCs will be the one paying for the free tuition. And they will be getting that from their MOE, which is also being used for research and development, for other costs. So I just want to put that on record, and I'll work with the good chairperson to source for funds. I know that is the most difficult. It's easier to spend. It's difficult to look for funds. But I just want to put that on record because we sympathize with our SUCs and also with CHED in giving out free college education to our students. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and you're welcome to stay or continue to monitor online because we appreciate the support we always get from our colleague, Senator Gatchalian. So now we'll call on Senator Risa Hontiveros, and I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Ronald De La Rosa, who can ask his questions after Senator Hontiveros. You may proceed, ma'am.
Salamat, Madam Chair, at magandang hapon muli sa iyo at sa mga colleagues. Magandang hapon din po sa ating mga kawani ng CHED, ng ating mga SUCs at pati na sa DAP. Ngayong hapon, Madam Chair, ay tinatalakay natin ang isang mahalagang aspeto ng ating nasyonal na programa para sa edukasyon. Like the chair and our colleagues, I'm a firm advocate of investing in our education sector. However, there are issues that must be addressed by our government agencies before we can push for a higher budget for the agencies. In the Senate, we've tackled the issue on the procurement of laptops by DepEd, which gives us more reason to be vigilant of the budget we've allocated for education. When I filed Senate Resolution number 128 in August, Madam Chair, my office received almost 400 complaints from UniFast scholars on the delayed release of their benefits, among others. Marami po sa kanila ang humiling na itago ang mga pangalan nila sa takot daw na baka matanggalan sila ng scholarship. Even the COA has reported inefficiencies, lack of oversight, and lack of control mechanisms of CHED in administering free higher education and tertiary education scholarships in its annual audit reports. Kahit gusto naming taasan ang budget ng CHED, kailangan makasiguro tayo na umaabot talaga ang tulong ng gobyerno sa mga estudyante. Nakakalungkot marinig ang mga kwento ng ating mga estudyanteng nagpapakahirap sa distance learning habang hindi pa nakararating sa kanila ang mga tulong na dapat nakalaan para sa kanila. Sana naman ay walang kumikita dito dahil stealing from our children would be stealing from our future. So ito lamang ang ilan sa aking mga magiging tanong.
Excuse me, Miss
Madam Chair,
Edward
yung
Lobel,
na
party
sinabi ni
line,
Madjo
please.
kanina. Salamat, Madam Chair. So ito lang po yung ilan sa aking mga itatanong sa budget briefing na ito, Madam Chair. So una na po, Madam Chair, tanong kay Chair De Vera ng CHED. Chair, totoo po ba na hanggang ngayon ay hindi pa rin na-implement ang student loan program na may pondo na 1 billion pesos kahit 5 taon na ang nakararaan mula nang naisabatas ito sa ilalim ng RA 10931, Madam Chair?
Madam Chair, we implemented the program. We started implementation 4 years ago. But there have been very few, if any, applications in the student loan fund. The Unifast board saw that there is a problem between the MOA, between the chair, Unifast board, and DBP, and this is the reason why the student loan program has not been implemented as expected. So what we did, pursuant to the COA recommendation, is to require the DBP to put in the National Treasury the 1 billion pesos that was allocated for the program.
Salamat, Chair. Tinumbok nyo yung susunod kong tanong sana tungkol nga doon sa MOA na yan at tungkol sa 1 billion pesos na ngayon ay nasa DBP. Ayon nga po kasi sa COA report, depektibo yung MOA na pinagkasunduan ng Unifast, ng CHED at saka ng DBP. Kaya nga, gaya ng sinabi nyo, Chair, hindi ma-implement ang programa. Sayang, napakaganda ng programang iyan. Napakarami sanang natulungan pa ng CHED ng mga estudyante at kani-kanilang pamilya, lalo na noong kasagsagan ng pandemic. In fact, 16,500 no less na estudyante sana ang napahiram natin ng tig 60,000 pesos ng tulong para sa pag-aaral nila. So, alam na naman pala po na may problema sa MOA. So, bakit hindi po ibinalik agad sa National Treasury ang 1 billion pesos na nakalaan para dito?
Ang dahilan ho talaga sa depektibong konsepto ng student loan ay yung mismong lengguwahe ng batas na ang inaatasang magpautang ay ang CHED. Hindi ho kami financial institution. Wala hong kakayahan ang CHED na maging isang bangko na magpatakbo ng student loan program. Pero nasa batas ho kasi na ang magpapatakbo ay CHED. So we have no recourse but to try to connect with the government financial institution. it would have been better if the law provided that it is the government financial institution who will run the loan program. Tandaan po natin, yung Study Now, Pay Later program ng CHED was one of the most problematic loan programs over the past 2 decades. Kaya po tinigil namin. Wala hong kakayahan ang komisyon. Pag tinignan nyo ho ang mga executive departments, hindi po sila loan facility. Yan ho ang talagang pinagmumulan nitong problema. Kaya we have been negotiating with the DBP for some time now to try to correct the problems in the tripartite agreement with very little success. So ang ginawa na lang po namin ay ipasoli na lang yung pera. Hindi po yan neglect on the part of CHED. Wala hong kakayahan ang executive departments na magpautang. Tignan nyo po ang iba-ibang departamento ng gobyerno. Hindi naman po kami government financial institution.
Sabi nyo nga po, Chair, na depektibo yung konsepto ng student loan or at least yung pag-assign ng financial responsibilities nito sa CHED. Sabi nyo nga po, hindi kayo financial institution o loan facility and that you have been negotiating with DBP to correct the problem. Kaya ko pong tanggapin na hindi ito neglect on the part of CHED kung ang itinakbo ng pagka-park na lang sa DBP savings account nitong 1 billion pesos ay siguro sa loob ng 1 taon lang. Kaya lang 4 o 5 taon na. So ayon nga sa batas, dapat nagamit iyan bago matapos ang taon na 2019. Tapos even worse, dumaan ang 2020, ang nakaraang taong 2021 at hindi nyo pa rin ibinilik ang pera. In negotiating po with DBP para i-correct yung problema sa MOA. Sinubukan po ba halimbawa na DBP bilang siya ay isang financial institution, bagamat maaring hindi siya loan facility sa ganitong programa, na siya ang mag-administer nito para ma-access nitong at least 16,500 students yung perang iyan. Hindi kasi bare-bare ang pinag-uusapan dito, Chair, di ba? And in fact, naibalik na po ba ninyo ng CHED yung nakapark na 1 billion pesos sa National Treasury?
Naibalik na po yung pera.
Mhm.
Hindi ko po alam kung anong ibig sabihin na sasabihan ng COA yung DBP. Wala hong provision kasi sa batas na ang DBP ang magpapatakbo ng programa. Ang nakalagay sa provision ng batas ay CHED.
Yes, sir. So, bakit hindi na-correct ang MOA at na-administer ng CHED yung perang iyon within a year, 2 years at most? Hindi po aabot ng 4 o 5 taon. Saka ano po yung nangyari sa interest earnings nung 1 bilyong pisong iyon?
Ipinasoli po lahat, pati interest, na ibigay na po noong Agosto. OR number 4221639, na isoli na po ang buong pera, pati ang interest.
Agosto po nitong taon, Chair, August 2022. At yung interest pong iyon ay mga 1.62 million pesos, tama po ba?
Mga 1.5 million ang interest.
1.5 M. May proof na po ba ang COA sa mga remittances na iyon dun sa 1 billion pesos na principal at yung 1.5 million pesos na interest?
Meron na po.
Okay. Meron pa po bang ibang nakapark na mga pondo para sa UAQTE na nakatenga hanggang sa ngayon?
Meron po kaming hindi natatanggap galing sa DBM na pag-download. Kaya may mga payables pa kami hanggang ngayon dahil ang huling binigay po sa amin ay 3 billion pesos nung 1 linggo. At yan po ay dina-download na namin pababa. Yun doon po sa tanong nyo na mabagal yung disbursement ng TES, dalawang panahon po yung talagang mabagal. Yung una ay yung nung kasagsagan ng COVID. Dahil po nagsara ang mga eskwelahan, hindi makakuha yung mga estudyante ng kanilang stipend at hindi rin makapunta ang mga school authority sa bahay ng mga estudyante dahil may problema sa transport. So nung 2020 po, talagang malaki yung lag doon sa pagbigay ng test. Yan po inaamin namin. Kaya ang ginawa namin ay pumirma kami ng kasunduan sa land bank na bigyan ng land bank cards na lang yung mga estudyante para pwede nilang kunin sa land bank ATM instead na magpunta sa kanilang eskwelahan. Ang pangalawang bumagal ay itong taon na ito dahil nagka-eleksyon po. At hinihingian kami ng proof ng na exempted yung pagbigay ng test doon sa panahon ng eleksyon. Humingi po kami ng pahintulot sa COMELEC, hindi naman kami binigyan. Kaya natanggap namin yung, o na-request ulit namin yung pera para test pagkatapos na po ng eleksyon. Kasi hindi namin ma-disburse during the election period. So, ngayon pa lang po kami nagbabayad ng second semester ng academic year 2021-2022.
Salamat, Chair. Yung pong napagkasundaan ninyo sa land bank, pinagpirmahan ninyo sa bangko na mabibigyan ng ATM cards yung mga estudyante, nangyari po ba ito para sa lahat ng estudyante?
Hindi po kaya ng land bank yung halos kalahating milyong mga estudyante. So they're doing it batch by batch in different parts of the country. So meron hong mga estudyante na may land bank cards na, yung mga iba ay nakapag-apply na pero hindi pa dumadating ang kanilang cards, no? Pwede po naming ibigay ang datos sa Senado kung kailangan ninyo.
Yes,
Kukunin po
please.
namin yan mula sa land bank.
Sige po, Chair. Pakilang. So mula po dito sa yung mga tanong ko sa non-implementation ng student loan program, dako naman po ako dito sa yung free higher education disbursement pero sa mga fully subsidized na mga LUCs. Ayon sa 2021 COA report ay nag-disburse daw ang CHED ng mahigit 251 million pesos sa 3 local universities and colleges na kasalukuyang tumatanggap na ng subsidy sa kani-kanilang local government unit. So kung naalala nyo po, Chair, sinagot nyo sa aking opisina ay wala namang provision sa batas na naglilimita sa pagdi-disburse sa mga LUCs na ito. Pero di ho ba mas judicious sana, mas prudent ang polisiya na given the limited resources, limited funding para sa educational assistance ng ating mga estudyante, imbis na ibayad natin sa mga LUCs na may pondo naman na, ay ilaan at dagdagan na lang natin ang benepisyaryo ng free higher education. So bakit po doble-doble ang pagbigay natin sa mga paaralang ito kung ang ibang SUCs o ang ibang LUCs ay di pa nakakatanggap ng reimbursement ng ilang taon?
Salamat po at tinanong niyo yan kasi yan ay isang issue na talagang matagal na naming pinagdidibatihan ng COA. Ganito po ang sitwasyon, no? Doon sa mismong batas, RA 10931, at doon sa GAA, wala hong nakalagay doon na hindi namin pwedeng bigyan yung mga LUCs na libre na ang tuition. Malinaw ho doon sa batas, RA 10931 at sa GAA, walang exemption. Sinubukan po namin yung gusto nyo, yung judicious use of funds. Naglagay
Yes.
po kami sa IRR ng provision na gano'n. Nagbabaka sakali kami na baka naman pwedeng tipirin ng konti ang pondo at maibigay sa iba. Pero nung discussion po ng budget ng CHED noong 2020, hinarang po o sinubukan pong harangin ang budget ng CHED sa House of Representatives dahil po naglagay kami sa IRR ng provision ng return service para sa mga scholar ng bayan. Sabi po ng House, hindi ho aaproban ng budget namin kung hindi namin ititigil itong mga ito dahil sabi nila kung ano ang nakasulat lamang sa batas, yun lamang ang aming susundin. Kaya pumayag po kami sa House na wag na munang ituloy yung return service agreement, bagamat naniniwala kami sa konseptong yon. Kaya po yun ang in-implement namin doon sa GAA nung taon na yon. Hindi ho namin sinundan yung IRR dahil nga baka harangin na naman ang aming budget at sabihin mas marunong pa kami sa mga mambabatas at wala namang sinabi ang mga mambabatas na exemption. Yun ho ang dahilan kung bakit nagkaganito. Ang interpretasyon ho ng COA ay dapat yung IRR ang manaig. Ang interpretasyon namin, yung batas ang manaig. Sino po ang magdidesisyon dyan? Humingi po kami ng legal opinion sa Department of Justice tsaka OSG. At kung ano man yung lumabas na legal opinion, doon po magdidesisyon ang Unifast Board sa tamang panahon.
Hindi pa po lumalabas yung legal opinions na iyon.
Wala pa po. But in recognition of the COA observation, pinatigil na ho namin yung sunod na pagbigay ng pondo doon sa tatlong city college, Taguig City, Valenzuela City at pamantasan ng lungsod ng Valenzuela. Hindi na po kami nagbigay ng susunod na reimbursement. Ngayon, kung lumabas po na illegal talaga, di pa sosoli namin sa kanila yung perang na ibigay sa kanila. Wala naman pong loss of government funds dito dahil ito po ay isyung legal na wala sa kakayanan ko bilang chair ng CHED at Unifast na magdesisyon on my own, Madam Chair.
Oh, Chair. At iba namang issue yung binanggit nyo kaninang provision sa IRR tungkol sa return service agreement at itong particular na yung pagbibigay ng additional FHE funds sa fully subsidized LUCs. So at least po, Chair, dun sa pagbibigay ng additional FHE funds sa fully subsidized LUCs, for the record, sang-ayon ba kayo na itong mga fully subsidized na mga LUCs ay hindi na dapat makatanggap pa ng additional FHE funds?
Hihintayin ko na lang po ang legal opinion ng OSJ tsaka DOJ dahil kung ano po ang sabihin ko, ako ay pupulaan din at sasabihin na mas marunong pa ako sa mga senador at congressman. Yun po ang sinabi sa amin sa House of Representatives, hindi po palulusutin yung aming budget kung nagmamarunong kami at naglalagay kami ng provision na wala doon sa batas. Pareho lang po yung return service at saka ito. These are provisions we put in the IRR to further strengthen the law, but in the law itself, there is no provision saying that we cannot give funds to LUCs who are already not charging tuition. Pareho po ang prinsipyong yon. Kaya lahat nung nasa IRR na wala sa batas, hindi po namin in-implement nung taon na yon.
Well, sayang, Chair. I was hoping na on the record, sasang-ayon kayo in the interest of maximizing, optimizing yung benefit sa mga estudyante nung limitadong pondo na ito, na you would agree, at least in principle, no, na i-stretch doon sa mga LUCs na hindi fully subsidized yung benepisyo nitong FHE funds. Kasi kami naman dito sa Kongreso, we appreciate yung ganyang mga opinions expressed by the responsible officers of agencies such as yours. Yes, Madam Chair.
Your time is up, Your Honor. But
Thank you, Madam Chair. Intayin ko na lang yung next rounds para sa ibang issues pa tungkol sa on alleged ghost scholars. Tapos last two questions po tungkol sa criteria ng CHED tungkol sa paglimita ng TES at FHE budget per higher education institution. Salamat, Madam Chair. Salamat din, Chair.
Your Honor, if you stay, we may be able to do a second round naman. So if you are available pa until hindi pa naman tayo nag-session, we are more than happy to continue with the hearing. So let's now call on Senator Ronald De La Rosa. Yeah, it's your time, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Isang question lang ito at very parochial question. Sir, magaan lang ito. Sir Popoy, meron lang, my office is in receipt of a letter coming from Zamboanga del Sur Maritime Institute of Technology. Nakasaad doon sa letter, sir, na they have requested for an issuance of special order of graduation for Zamboanga del Sur Maritime Institute of Technology graduates, but CHED Regional Office 9, OIC, Regional Director Dr. Rodi Garcia rejected the said request. Furthermore, the current management of ZSMIT stated that despite the never-ending pay for issuance, Dr. Garcia still refused to issue the SO. Thus, these graduates are unjustly / illegally stripped of their employment opportunities despite finishing their degree. Ito sir, masyadong parokyal lang ito pero kung mapagbigyan natin ito, baka makatulong rin tayo doon sa mga estudyante na nakagraduate pero hindi pa makatrabaho dahil kulang ng ISO. Yun lang sir, pinaparating ko lang sa iyo yung kanilang hinaing. Baka pwede mo kaming matulungan dyan. Thank you sir.
May I answer, Madam Chair? Yan pong
Yes, go ahead.
Yung problemang yan ay problema na matagal na po sa CHED. Merong magkaaway na dalawang magkapatid tungkol sa eskwelahan. At yan po ay yung pangalawang away nila. Yung una po ay doon sa kanilang maritime school na nagkasuhan silang dalawa. Nung gusto pong mag-intervene ng CHED, sabi ho, kakasuhan kami pag kami nakialam. This is another area where the two contending siblings are, having a legal issue between them and the school. So in a sense, medyo our hands are tied. Pero pag-aaralan ko po, Senator De La Rosa, titignan ko muli yung issue at baka naman pwede kaming gumawa ng paraan para sa mga estudyante. Doon ho kasi sa isang away nila, ang ginawa namin ay nabigyan naman namin ng SO yung ibang estudyante. Pero kami po'y kinasuhan din. Dahil yung kabila naman, sabi niya, ba't binigyan nyo ng SO yung kabila? Ako ang totoong may-ari ng eskwelahang yan. Mga 5 taon na po yung kaso na medyo nasabit ang CHED yan. Pero pag-aaralan ko po.
Sige sir, ako mismo rin at pwede ko rin kausapin yung both parties na para sa mga bata lang ito, para kawawa naman yung mga bata, hindi makapagtrabaho. Tulungan kita ang kausapin yun na huwag silang magsampa ng kaso against sa inyo para lang sa mga bata ito. Maliit na bagay lang dapat ito di ba sir?
Salamat po, Senator De La Rosa. Mababawasan ang trabaho ng mga abogado namin tsaka ng OSG kasi po sa mga kaso nauubos ang oras namin tsaka yung Office of the Solgen dahil kaliwat kanan ko ang kaso na sinasampa against each other and also against us.
Sige sir, maraming salamat po. Madam Chair, maraming salamat for my time. Yun lang po. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The chair will take a few minutes also to ask some clarificatory questions, and then those around are very much welcome to do a second round. So I'll just pass over some of the key issues discussed, to confirm that they are issues that the chair also supports. For the record, we had a briefing with the same resource persons here today, so a lot of these issues were already discussed in private, but I'd like to make of public that I share the concern raised by both PASUC and CHED on the decrease of the subsidies for universal access to quality tertiary education. Napakapangit ng acronym na yan, kaya I just say the whole thing. And then also for tests, as I intervened during the questions of Senator Gatchalian, I know Chairman Popoy na you don't turn away students. Although in the past, this is like 4 or 5 years ago when this was just being implemented. I know that there were SUC presidents who told me that wala silang choice but to turn away kung walang-wala na talaga silang space or refer to another. More of ganun yung policy, refer to another SUC or if possible private, and then tulungan na lang by way of test or something. So we recognize that there will be a shortage in the funding, and I am happy that we have colleagues who will support us in our push for additional funding for this. We don't know what happened, but Senator Joel, when he stepped out, assured me that he will take this up also with DBM. Of course, it's already in the hands of Congress, but we really want to understand kung paano ba nangyari to. This is very important to us because we assume consistency in the policies of the new administration that education takes a priority role, no? So we want to see that this is put into action. Doktor para sa bayan, my colleague Senator Joel Villanueva has said most of what I want to say. I think what I want to add na lang dun sa kanyang mga na-point out na concerns is with regards to new applications for medical programs. Maybe we can also recognize the reality that we have university hubs, no? We have university communities. So like when we mentioned that Benguet State U is still in the process of assessing their ability, no? To tama, no? That's the status, no, Chair Popoy, assessing their ability to offer a med school, but they are based in Baguio, no, or just on the fringes of Baguio. So they have access to the ecosystem of the education ecosystem available in Baguio City. So I think what we need to do, both not both, but Congress and then CHED and DOH, is look at this ecosystem that ecosystems that are available to us and make this happen. So for whatever reasons, and I'm just using Benguet State, no, I have nothing against them. I'm not familiar with their application, but whatever stage they are at, and any other SUC who can consider this. Let's look at the entire ecosystem. No, I used to say that we look at the undergrad programs that are available in that university. Obviously, di ba? Eh kung wala man lang siyang nursing or medtech or kung ano man undergrad, baka naman bigla siyang magkaroon ng med school, di ba? Parang katakataka naman yon. But I'm saying now that we can make use of the entire ecosystem. I would imagine that meron pa rin siyang undergrad courses, pre-med undergrad courses na available, but in the same way that you need a functioning medical facility that they can train in, ganun din yung tingnan din natin beyond that. Now, what are the other schools in the area? What other support system can we give these SUC so that they can step up and open up and help us achieve this goal that we have, which is a sufficient number of doctors, no? And I will also mention here, when I speak of the Doctor para sa Bayan Act, I am actually referring to also the support for the allied health programs. I have sent word, and I hope, I don't know kung kaya within today's hearing, I've asked what SUCs are primed and are applying for more or are ready to come up with more allied health programs, because you need also these programs to not just support the Doktor para sa Bayan, but to support the whole health system in the country. During my conversations with Acting Secretary Vergere, I understand, Chair Popoy, that she is working with you on benchmarking where we are in terms of human health resource. So I'll keep it at that. I'm very conscious of time. I want to give our colleagues more time, but we'll discuss that further. But I am hoping that during this budget deliberation, we can also support more SUCs who are ready to expand and increase their programs for health, allied health programs. Okay. Let's go now to an issue very close to my heart, and I'm sure to the heart of my colleague Senator Gatchalian and Senator Villanueva, who had to step out. They both chaired the two committees on education last Congress, and Senator Gatchalian still chairs the Committee on Basic Education. Face-to-face classes. During the briefing that I had with all of you present last week, and President Tirso, you're there, no? So I'm addressing this to, please be sure you're available. President Tirso, I see you. I see Chair Popoy and President Danicon. Please be sure you're all listening to me right now. On face-to-face resumption of classes. So I now have in front of me the data that PASUC said that they had, and thank you very much for putting this together. It's a list of SUCs and their implementation of face-to-face classes. So as mentioned by President Tirso, there are 34 SUCs that have full face-to-face for all programs and in full capacity. So in other words, lahat ng courses na ino-offer nila, full face-to-face yan. Lahat ng courses na ino-offer nila. And as defined by CHED, ang full face-to-face is 75%, correct? And I have no problem with that. I don't mind that the 25% is creative as long as it is put to good use, but that every student, 75% of their hours will be in front of their teacher, in their classroom physically. The 25%, they can be in group studies, they can be in libraries, they can be under a mango tree, right? And they can be virtual. Am I correct, Chair Popoy? Yun ang ibig sabihin nun.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. And I'm
Beyond 25, it is classified as distance education.
Yes. President Ronquillo, do I assume correctly na yung number 1 mo nga na full face-to-face 100% for all programs and full capacity? That means also full capacity. Kung yung classroom is good for 30 or good for 40, pinapayagan nila na 30 yung full capacity ang pumasok sa classroom na yon. And then it says here with cycling schedule and shifting. So that I assume is aligned with the CHED directive of 75%. Is that correct, President Tirso?
Tama po.
Tama. Okay. So let's move on. The second category are composed of 16 SUCs that are implementing full face-to-face, so 100% for all programs, but are following a 75 capacity rule. So bakit may 75 capacity? In other words, ibig sabihin, lahat ng programs nila, lahat kayo pwede nang pumasok, pero ililimit yung classroom. So kung 30, 75% lang ang pwede, so 22%. Ano reason ng mga binibigay, President Tirso? Bakit daw may pa 75%? And let me move on to the third category, which is very similar. Lahat ng courses, full face-to-face, pero with reduced capacity of 50 to 75. So ang difference lang nito is mas maliit pa. Kung 30 students per classroom, meaning to say 15 hanggang 21 students lang ang available. Doon muna tayo. And that is 16 plus 7, that is 23 SUCs. Saan galing yung benchmarking nila na 50, yung 50 to 75 limit nila? Do you know?
Madam Chair, I think we can call out some of the issues here in our list, how they really implemented this. Based on our discussion, they really took into consideration the space that they have have in their university, not to make it too crowded. So maybe for the 16 in the list, Madam Chair, we can have some case in point to really ask from them how they really implemented this.
Oh, sige, quick answer lang. I just want to know what is the basis for limiting it to 75%? Eh si CHED naman wala siyang ganon. And ang IATF wala na rin pong ganon. So what is the basis? Sino magvo-volunteer? Sinong volunteer nyo? Sinong tribute nyo? Dr. Tirso? Meron ba?
Anybody, we have in our list as per our survey, the number 2 category as mentioned by Senator Pia, Pangasinan State University, Quirino State University, Batanes State College, Tarlac State University, Bataan Peninsula State University.
President, wag mo nang isa-isahin kasi lack of time tayo. Meron bang sasagot? Kasi kung hindi, I will go. Oh, while I'm waiting for the answer, let me go to the fourth category. The fourth category has five SUCs. Ito yung SUCs implementing partial, hindi na nga full face-to-face lahat ng programs. It means to say that some of their programs do not even have face-to-face at all. Bakit natin ginaganito yung mga bata? I'm curious what these are. Unless distance learning program to. Tama, okay, I go back to Chair Popoy. 'Di ba? Unless distance learning yung schools na yon, the assumption is they should be having face-to-face. Tama ba ako?
Madam Chair, they have to apply for distance learning. They cannot do
Okay.
it unilaterally.
That was going to be my next question. Na unilateral ba yun? Okay, so anyway, so there are 5 that are implementing partial face-to-face. That means 75 to 50% lang of their programs. So if they're offering 30 programs, mga 7 to 15 of those are not even going to school. And then, but in full capacity, meaning to say, pag nagpapasok sila dun sa mga program na may pasok, 100% naman ang allowed dun sa capacity ng classroom nila. So, ibig sabihin, it's program-based. So, I also am curious, anong program yung ayaw niyong papasukin yung mga bata? Anong program yun? O, ang schools naman dito, 5 lang, kaya babanggitin ko na. UP, Cagayan State University, Northern Iloilo State University, South Cotabato State College, and Mindanao State University. So, nabanggit na rin lang dito ang UP. Ang tinanong ko na naman to dun sa briefing, and correct me if I'm wrong, or please update me, President Danny, has there been any change? Because you told me during the briefing that hindi nyo daw mapigilan and it's beyond your control if the LGU does not allow. Tama, yun ang sinagot nyo sa akin.
Isa po yun sa mga dahilan.
Sorry, and before I proceed, before I let you reply, ang sabi nyo, may mga LGU nga na hindi pumapayag. And correct me if I'm wrong, that's why I told you to have your chancellors there. Kasama dyan ang UP Diliman sa hindi pa full face-to-face, correct? So you confirm what I'm saying?
Sa Diliman po, lahat ng lab classes ay face-to-face na. But in compliance with the distance, physical distance rules being implemented by Quezon City, hindi pa rin po nagpapalit ng rules ang Quezon City government. Okay.
Mr. President, sino liaison officer mo na nag-coordinate kay Mayor Joy Belmonte? Because I sent Mayor Joy Belmonte a long message and asked her, is it true that QC still has health protocols for the conduct of classes because UP is still doing blended because of QC COVID protocols daw? Sabi niya, Senator Pia, this is not true.
Okay, so I will...
So sino liaison officer mo? Kasi they're wasting my time.
No,
President
it is
Danny, you
not-
and I are good friends. We have gone back for so long. You were my professor, and you will not stand for a student answering you this way. Tama ba? You would
Of
not stand
course.
for it.
Okay, so I'll
So
go
bakit
back.
naman inaabala niyo yung oras ko? Sinabi ko na sa inyo nung hearing, siguraduhin niyo yung sagot niyo sa akin, and I gave you a chance.
Kasi po, iba yung...
Verify this. So let me
Diba?
complete the record para hindi na mag-abala yung liaison officer niyo. Pasensya na ho kayo kung naaabala kayo.
Okay, ma'am. So,
Sabi ni
bumalik
hindi,
namin.
tatapusin ko yung sinabi ni Mayor Joy. Sayang naman ang pagte-text message namin sa isa dahil 3
Okay.
araw kami nagbabalikan ng text. Gabing-gabi sinasagot niya ako dahil busy siya. Good morning, Mayor. Galing to dun sa kanyang Education Affairs Office. The city has given its letter of no objection based on the request of UP. Our understanding is they follow the CHED guidelines. Eh yung letter request nyo, kayo naman na nagre-request ng limited face-to-face. Ganun ka kataas ang plano nyo. Limited face-to-face yung mga request nyo. Eh di syempre, pumayag naman siya. So following daw kayo sa CHED guidelines, eh sinabi na ng CHED, pwede naman ng face-to-face. So niliwanag ko pa. Do I understand correctly that the city does not impose any restrictions? In other words, as far as the city is concerned, can they go back to full face-to-face? Ang sagot ng magaling na mayor ng Quezon City, yes, they can, Senator Pia. How funny naman of them to cite Quezon City. And so I thank her for all the time she has spent, and I said to her, I am dismayed and I feel bad when they make up these kind of excuses. And sabi niya, I hate also that we are always blamed. So ano na ba talaga?
Well,
And then let me proceed. Ano status ng face-to-face sa Baguio, sa UP Baguio?
Sa UP Baguio, the same po, lahat ng laboratory nila ay face-to-face. Sa UP Cebu ay fine arts and courses which require internship ay full 100% face-to-face.
Okay, let me stop you lang there, Mr. President, okay? Yung laboratory courses na yan, and I think you will remember this, Senator Gatchalian, maybe Senator Risa, but it's just that the chairman of Basic Ed and I have had many discussions on face-to-face. Di ba parang late 2020, ano na yan, issuance yan na pwede na ang limited face-to-face. Kaya ang UP College of Med and all the other med schools nagka face-to-face dahil sa laboratory nila. Patawarin, that was 2 years ago. And when we had the same hearing, I already pointed out, stop telling me that allowed ang face-to-face sa mga specific programs like those with labs kasi matagal na ngang allowed. Ang pinaglalaban ko are ordinary programs, everyday programs, liberal arts, history, architecture, whatever. Yun yung kailangan makapasok yung mga bata. May social needs and I will not lecture you because you have enough people who know that this is important. Okay, now, ano yung isang reason? So, sorry, nasabi ko na yung sa Baguio, di ba? So, I won't bore you with all the other LGUs that I have called. But believe me when I tell you, I called them. And I found out na wala pa ako narinig na bawal ang face-to-face sa mga LGU nila. Now, the other reason you gave me is parents. Okay, I also had a briefing with DepEd. Sabi ng DepEd, wala naman daw mga parents na umaangal sa face-to-face. Wala. Alam mo kung saan sila nakakarinig ng angal, sabi nila sa akin, sa private sector. So saan tayo nakakarinig ng angal na ayaw mag face-to-face? Some, not all, some private schools, and guess what? The SUCs. So you have a problem, guys. You told me during the briefing na eto yung standards natin, eto nanalo na tayo ng mga international recognition sa quality sa education natin, pero bumaba ng konti because probably because of COVID. Well, malamang tuloy-tuloy bababa yan dahil hindi naman tayo nag-e-effort na bumalik tayo sa face-to-face, and I have not found a legitimate reason why we have not gone back to face-to-face. And all of you are asking for additional budget. Paano magbibigay ng budget? Hindi nyo naman pinaglalaban na makabalik ng face-to-face yung mga estudyante nyo. O dorm, sagot ko yun. I have here beside me 2 colleagues. I'm sure they will support my request for additional funding for dorms. Lahat na nag-submit ng application for dorm, I will find a way to support it. Because that directly addresses the need of students to be on campus. What else? So I don't understand and I give up. Hingi-hingi kayo ng tulong sa amin, tapos di nyo man lang mapabalik yung mga bata sa school. You didn't even make an effort to give me the real info. Anyone has anything else to say on this matter? You may say whatever else you want to say, President Danicon. I gave you all the good faith that is available in my heart.
Well,
Because you are my friend.
I don't know about the text of Joy Belmonte. It is true that hindi naman nila pinagbabawal yung face-to-face. Pero sa aking pagkakaalam, hindi pa nila nililift yung physical distancing doon sa loob ng kwarto. So I will have to call her and ask her, inilift na ba ninyo yung physical distancing inside the classroom?
You know, Mr. President, the problem is, hindi man lang kayo nag-aabala, you don't seem to want to make an effort anyway. Because sinabi ko na to so you want to read between the lines and say, hindi pa pala nalilift. Sinabi ng hindi And clearly, your liaison officer is not pushing for this. Okay? Doon sa isang pinakamamahal na college ko, it's not the College of Law, it's not the School of Economics where I graduated from, and it is not also CHK na alam niyong pinagbubuhusan ko ng pansin. It's the College of Architecture where my daughter graduated from. Wala na siya doon, okay? So this doesn't affect her. I just happened to receive information from one of the students there na hindi man lang pinapagamit yung, anong tawag doon, yung malalaking board, yung drafting table. Bakit? Para na tayong bumalik na ba tayo dun sa panahon na ano yun, nasa No Limit Hungary ba yun, na nakasara dun sa glass cabinet yung mga mamahaling gamit? Paano na tayo nagkaganito? I'll repeat, sorry, thank you. My challenge remains, you want budget, show me that you're making an effort to do the most basic. Allow the students to have face-to-face classes. Show me that you're making that effort. Because otherwise, I'll focus my efforts where they're more appreciated. I'll focus my efforts on the dorm. I'll focus my efforts on, I don't know, on other programs that are not related to your classrooms because you don't seem to find the importance of having face-to-face classroom. All of you. Except for the 34 na nag-comply dun sa guidelines ng CHED. Kasi yung the remaining 7 na may 75 capacity, di ko alam kung saan galing yun. It's your LGU, call me. Tell my staff, I'll be the one to call the LGU for you. Okay? Kasi ang mga nakalista dito na may 75, Pangasinan State U, Quirino State U, sige, tatawagan ko yung LGU kung hindi clear sa inyo. But from the information I have, these are made-up standards. For what reason, I do not know. So yun na, ako na nagsasabi sa inyo, kung DepEd, sa DepEd, wala nang magulang na umaangal, tas iaangal nyo pa sa akin, President Danny, na umaangal yung mga parents, then there are a few exceptions to the rules that we can accommodate. Pero to make that the general rule, kung ba't hindi pumapasok yung mga bata, di ko na talaga maintindihan. Di ko na talaga maintindihan, give up na ako. Okay? May gusto ka pang sabihin, Mr. President?
Wala na. Sorry. But siguro iba yung DepEd, iba yung higher education, ano? Kasi kami,
Wow, Mr. President, sorry, I must interrupt you. Kung yung DepEd, papayagan nila yung mga anak nila na nasa DepEd, 18 and below, 6 years old, 7 years old, 9 years old pumasok, you're telling me na yung mga magulang ng nasa higher education, 18, 19, 20, pipigilan pa yung anak nila? Eto, totoo to. Meron akong kaibigan, may 3 siyang anak na puro pagdodoktor ang inaaral. Sabi niya, inaamin ko, ayoko silang pumasok kasi gusto ko, kasama ko sila sa bahay. Pero alam ko na dapat silang pumasok, ganun. Ako rin bilang nanay, gusto ko nandun sila sa bahay, sama-sama kami, mag-online na lang lahat para sama-sama kami. But that is not what is good for the student.
well,
So if that is the dominant feeling of the parents, I don't even think they will send their student to UP.
kasi merong study, ito yung kanilang sinasite, na yung mga bata na mura ang edad, hindi sila sing vulnerable nung mga may edad na nasa higher education na. And maybe that's one.
naman.
So, I'm just telling you the possibility, okay? I'm not telling you na I
Pwede ba
share.
yung camera, i-focus nyo dito kay Senator Gatchalian na tumatawa? Kasi reaction ko lang ang nakikita eh.
Ang sa akin, it's maybe one of the reasons. Okay, in fact,
No, but you have made it the basis for your decisions.
No.
It is
I'm not telling you.
ridiculous.
I'm telling you, it is not my decision. Okay, it is not my decision.
No,
Senator Tia.
you, the UP
Okay.
system and all the other schools, no? All the
I'm
other schools
just-
that are not pushing for the face-to-face resumption of classes.
I'm just trying to tell you what the reasons we received during our town hall meeting. Okay, and I am not making this up. I'm just telling you what we received in the town hall meeting, and we conducted
po.
several. That's what I'm telling you. And if you don't believe me, I'm sorry. But it is not my decision, okay, to hold mixed or blended learning here in UP. In fact, one of the debates raging now in UP is paradigm shift, no? It's paradigm shift. Do we have to go back 100% the way we conducted education before the pandemic? That is still a raging issue, and it's the issue not only in the Philippines, it is an issue worldwide. Worldwide. Babalik pa ba tayo doon sa dating paraan ng pagtuturo before the pandemic o magkakaroon na ng paradigm shift? Magkakaroon na ng pagbabago sa pagtuturo. At hindi na tayo babalik doon sa kagaya ng dati. This is a raging debate, not only in the Philippines, but also in the world. And I will be going to another meeting of world universities na para pag-usapan ito.
Okay, balitaan niyo po kami.
Yes.
Due to time constraints, I need to give the floor to Senator Risa who'd like to manifest something, no? But before we leave this topic, as I said during the briefing, I am very open to changes and innovations in the way we teach, in the way we educate. Pero wag nating gawing dahilan ng COVID, which is still the excuse being given when I see this 75 capacity, 50% capacity. So I leave it to all of you to determine what your final recommendations would be. But like I said, as the chairman of this committee, you will not get my support if I do not see any efforts in resuming full face-to-face classes. As to paradigm shifts na yung mga distance education, go ako dyan all the time. Blended learning for reasons other than COVID, go ako dyan all the time. But to just generalize na hindi na tayo babalik sa face-to-face or hanggang ngayon hindi pa tayo bumalik, hindi ako papayag dyan. So anyway, Senator Risa, you have the floor.
Salamat, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, ima-manifest ko na lang itong huling tatlong tanong ko and request the good chair just to request Chair De Vera to reply to them in writing. Ito po yung mga tanong tungkol sa alleged ghost scholars, alleged misuse of funds by higher education institutions, at saka delayed release of tertiary education subsidy tuition payments to HEIs and benefits to students. And lastly, a couple of questions kaugnay po ng criteria of CHED to limit TES and FHE budget per higher education institution and therefore limiting the number of beneficiaries per HEI. So salamat, Madam Chair, and naasahan ko na lang yung sagot ng CHED in writing through the good chair. Thank you.
Yes, please be guided, no, those responses to questions. And please, because of the sudden change of this schedule, we have colleagues who were not able to attend. So I will not be adjourning this hearing, no. I will give them time to submit their questions. And I will keep you posted if there is a need for a succeeding hearing. So kindly just make yourself available for the week. Yun nga, ang beauty naman ng online pwede, but if necessary, there will be a hearing on Friday. I will require you to be here face-to-face. So, but please await further notice on that. So on that note, this hearing is suspended. Thank you.